Chapter 1008. When Yen Zhaoge had first arrived in the royal Reed Sea, his cultivation base had still been low as he had been weak. Their main enemy, the Radiant Light sect, had the possibility of being a threat to broad Creed Mountain of the Eight Extremities world. It was like a butcher's knife hanging over the Eight Extremities world, which could descend at any moment. At that time, Yen Zhaoge had been moving between the major powers of the royal Reed Sea, expanding the space in which he could operate. During this process, they had disrupted the Grand Xian dynasty's plans to set up the heaven-bearing Effecate formation, simultaneously killing and injuring many of their people, causing their enmity to grow deeper and deeper to the point where they were irreconcilable enemies. At that time, Yen Zhaoge had not been concerned about why the Heaven Emperor had secretly ordered Shenlingzi and the others to come to the royal Reed Sea to set up the heaven-bearing Effecate formation. Also not being concerned about why that emperor had been so fixated on searching for the legendary Earth Queen of the Four Imperials of Taoism. That was a problem that the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jie should be considering. Yen Zhaoge only had to consider how to raise his strength in order to deal with the threat posed by the Grand Xian dynasty. Now, however, when he had to face the Heaven Emperor directly, the heaven-bearing Effecate formation, which he had not paid much attention to previously, became the focus of Yen Zhaoge's gaze once more. Why did the big dry emperor secretly order people to set up the heaven-bearing Effecate array? Why did the location of the formation seem to be fixed on the southeastern Yang Heaven Territory's royal Reed Sea? Why is this Tao sect great emperor so bothered and unable to let it go after being obstructed? Apart from the Heaven Emperor himself, the reactions of the others were also a little strange. While the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jie was a sword cultivator, he was very mild most of the time, having the attitude of making things convenient for others and himself. However, as a ruler of the First Realm and a sword cultivator, if he was provoked, he would rather break than bend. Even in the face of a perfected immortal emperor who had pushed open the gate of immortality, he would not yield. Still, after having first learnt of the existence of the heaven-bearing Effecate formation, Chao Jie had still tacitly allowed Kong Ping and the others of the Grand Xian dynasty to remain in the royal Reed Sea and continue setting up the formation. It was just that the existence of Yen Zhaoge and Broad Creed Mountain had prevented the Grand Xian dynasty from achieving anything. Yen Zhaoge was on friendly terms with Golden Court Mountain, and Golden Court Mountain was more or less biased towards him and Broad Creed Mountain in secret. It just so happened that a great battle was about to erupt between the southeastern Yang Heaven Territory and the southern Blazing Heaven Territory, with Phoenix Ritual Mountain's Wudong Slope also wanting to get rid of Yen Zhaoge. In the end, when the war between the southeast and the south had erupted, the Heaven Emperor had kept the southeastern Exalt Chao Jie busy, making use of the southern Exalt Zhuang Shun to take care of the martial practitioners of the southeast, as well as Yen Zhaoge and Broad Creed Mountain. This instead infuriated the southeastern Exalt Chao Jie, who contacted the Brocade Emperor to assist him, finally forcing the Heaven Emperor and the southern Exalt Zhuang Shun into retreat. The other peak experts of the world beyond worlds did not support or interfere with this. Logically speaking, searching for the Earth Goddess who had been missing since the Great Calamity was a huge matter for the entire Taoism. Yen Zhaoge believed that the peak experts of Taoism would all attempt to search for it if they had a way. As for the other peak experts of the world beyond worlds, the Heaven Emperor's actions were viewed more as a personal matter of the Heaven Emperor. Therefore, it was only the Brocade Emperor who intervened in this matter out of his personal friendship with the Southeastern Exalt. Since it was a private matter, what kind of reason could it be? Yen Zhaoge, who was about to face the might of that immortal emperor, was very interested in this. I will personally take responsibility for this matter. Yendi's interest was piqued as he kept the jade coin. Yen Zhaoge stood up. Father, I'll be heading over to the vast ocean world then. Yendi nodded. Yes, rest easy. To be honest, I cannot rest easy. Still, it is not that I cannot rest easy here. Yen Zhaoga smiled bitterly. Miss Guan Yulua from the north has sent news that the door that Yunxing entered will only have a chance to reopen after a few years at least. Feng Yunxing's departure had cut off her path of retreat to a certain extent. Therefore, Yen Zhaoga was unable to ascertain whether she was safe or not. While he knew that this was actually a very normal thing for a martial practitioner with a firm will who harbored great ambitions, Feng Yunsheng herself possessed outstanding talent, also possessing the extreme crown and the cold sun divine saber. Still, it would be impossible for Yen Zhaoga to not be worried at all, no matter how much confidence he had in Feng Yunsheng. As the chief of a lineage, I feel very comforted to have such a descendant amongst my disciples. Yen Di said, "Still, I can understand your thoughts." Yen Zhaoga sighed towards the heavens. "Father, the wives of the men of our Yen family are really worrisome." Yen Di said exasperatedly, "How can you say that? Let alone finding your wife to the point where my hair is almost turning white. My wife has gone missing again." Yen Zhaoga shrunk his neck, but still muttered softly. Yen Di was angered by his lazy look as he pointed at him, unable to speak, just as he was about to strike him. Yen Zhaoga had already fled the secluded room. Looking at his son's fleeing figure, Yen Di did not know whether to laugh or to cry. After a while, Yen Zhaoga popped his head out from the door. "Right, father, how is that junior apprentice brother Xia?" 5 years ago, Xia Guang, who had returned to the southeastern Yangheaven territory with Yen Zhaoga, had managed to enter Broad Creed Mountain as he had wished. To him, none of the various tests had been difficult. While he had started out as a white-clothed disciple due to the sex rules, he had very quickly donned a blue robe before even having a black border on the robe, becoming a direct disciple of Broad Creed Mountain. Meanwhile, the master he had finally acknowledged was none other than the chief, Yen Di. Shocking talent, exceptional comprehension ability, diligent and hardworking, Yen Di evaluated. As for Xia Guang's fiery temperament that was easily broken, he did not care much about it. To a certain extent, Yen Di was someone with a similar temperament as well, just that he did not display it as openly as Xia Guang. Yen Zhaoga asked, "Has he still not found his kin?" Yen Di shook his head. "No." When the consecutive Drum Mountain Range's listening Thunder Peak's Xia family had been exterminated that year, apart from Xia Guang, only 2 of their descendants who had been tempering outside had survived. After Xia Guang had returned to the southeastern Yangheaven territory with Yen Zhaoga that year and entered Broad Creed Mountain, he had immediately returned to the consecutive Drum Mountain Range to look for his kin. Still, he had received news that his elder brother and sister had not returned. Over the past 5 years, Broad Creed Mountain had sought Golden Court Mountain's help in searching within the southeastern Yangheaven territory. Still, they had not been able to find them. Xia Guang had originally been terrified as he had thought that the 2 of them had fallen into the hands of 3-Foot Mountain. Still, after asking around, he had gradually confirmed that 3-Foot Mountain had no news of their whereabouts. Xia Guang could only temporarily suppress his anxiety as he thought that his elder brother and sister might have learned of their family's situation from the outside as well. Fearing that 3-Foot Mountain would eliminate them by the roots, they had temporarily gone into hiding and concealed their identities. Therefore, after settling down in Broad Creed Mountain, he would venture outside from time to time. The fame of the Blood Thunderbolt, Xia Guang was already no longer limited to the Royal Reed Sea, as he had become a rather famous martial practitioner of Broad Creed Mountain after Yen Zhaoga, and Yen Di had entered secluded cultivation in recent years. Xia Guang had no intention of making a name for himself. Instead, he hoped that his kin would receive news of this and come to the Royal Reed Sea to look for him. Junior apprentice brother Xia has really gone through a lot of trouble. I hope that his elder brother and sister are blessed by the heavens and can reunite with him soon. Yen Zhaoga sighed. Yan Di nodded slowly. This new disciple of his could be said to be in the same boat as them. Yan Di's gaze drifted for an instant before turning resolute once more. The Human Exalt Stage. Chapter 1009. Yen Zhaoga also desired to ascend to the Human Exalt realm as soon as possible. However, that was the goal of a martial practitioner. When it came to his mother, Xue Chuqing, he didn't need to wait that long. Having already been to the immortal court, in the eyes of Chao Jia, Lu Zhenggu, and the others, he had already given up. Of course, the return of Chao Jia and the others also entailed the return of the Southern Exalt Zhuangshen, as well as the return of the Western Exalt, who was on bad terms with the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia. The conflict between the immortal court and Buddhism gradually turned from intense to peaceful once more. With the matter over there having come to an end, the Heaven Emperor might also be able to return to the world beyond worlds. Yen Zhaoga and all of Broad Creed Mountain had to make preparations early on. After formally bidding farewell to Yen Di, Yen Zhaoga headed to the vast ocean world. There was no need to specially leave someone behind in the world beyond worlds this time. Pan Pan would accompany him down to take up the role of a protector. Hu and Xiao AI remained in the world beyond worlds to cultivate. The environment here was better. In the past few years, Hu had cultivated in seclusion and finally succeeded in transcending mortality and entering the Saint Realm, stepping into the Martial Saint Realm. Ying Longtu and Sikong Qing were the same. Among them, Sikong Qing was slightly earlier. What was especially worth mentioning was that Ying Longtu had transcended mortality and entered sainthood at the age of 27, setting a new record for Broad Creed Mountain. Considering that he had only come to the world beyond worlds as a martial grandmaster, this speed was definitely amongst the top even in the entire world beyond worlds. Apart from that, Xiao AI and Shi Jun had also reached the transcending mortality martial grandmaster realm, and were in the process of breaking through to the martial sacred realm. As a fourth-generation disciple of Broad Creed Mountain, the fact that Shi Jun had reached such a cultivation realm made Yuan Zhengfeng, Yan Di, Fang Juan, Fu Enshu, and the other seniors of Broad Creed Mountain feel gratified. While Yen Zhaoga and Yan Di had seldom moved about in recent years, with Broad Creed Mountain also having been rather quiet, the accumulation of the entire clan had grown more and more profound. A year after Yen Zhaoga had entered secluded cultivation in the vast ocean world, his father, the chief of Broad Creed Mountain, Yan Di, had advanced further into the 8th level of the Martial Saint Realm, the mid-immortal bridge stage. Today, the conditions for Broad Creed Mountain to officially reopen its headquarters in the world beyond worlds and accept disciples were already ripe. At the level of the large forces and peak experts, everyone was still observing. Only after clashing with the likes of the Heaven Emperor and the Southern Exalt would they be able to tell whether Broad Creed Mountain was a dragon or a snake. However, to the middle and lower class martial practitioners, especially the ordinary commoners who were completely unaware of the situation, they did not know of the situation that Broad Creed Mountain was about to face. They could only know that a new legend had risen in the southeastern Yang Heaven Territory's Royal Reed Sea, and these people were the true targets of Broad Creed Mountain's recruitment. While Broad Creed Mountain rejoiced in Yan Di's advancement, they were in no rush to officially open the mountain. It was not that they were fearful of bigwigs like the Heaven Emperor and the Southern Exalt, or that their current foundation was still unstable. There was only one reason. Yen Zhaoga was still in secluded cultivation in the vast ocean world. Most of our sect's current situation and reputation in the world beyond worlds was single-handedly established by Zhaoga. Yuan Zhengfeng made the final decision. How can we not wait for him when we officially open our sect? Yan Di did not try to be modest or avoid suspicion as he directly nodded and said, "It is as Master has said." Fang Juan smiled slightly With Zhaoga's current cultivation and experience, he still has not taken in a disciple. I wonder if anyone will be able to catch his eye when he opens the mountain this time. Having been in the world beyond worlds for more than 10 years, while Feng Zhuan still had to shoulder many of the sect's daily affairs, he had spent most of his time cultivating as he gradually regained his vitality. While he had not advanced by leaps and bounds like Yen Di, he had already successfully broken through space and seen true divinity not long ago, adding another seeing divinity martial saint to Broad Creed Mountain. Due to his previous grievous injury, his current improvements were rather eye-catching. The hidden dragon of the 8 extremities world vaguely showed signs of emerging from the abyss in the world beyond worlds. That matter that Zhaoga mentioned before going to the vast ocean world has already come to an end, Yuan Zhengfeng said. It is just that I do not know how much these investigations will be able to bring us. While Yen Di and Yen Zhaoga had surpassed their predecessors, after many years of cultivation, Yuan Zhengfeng had also attained the 6th level of the martial saint realm, the late seeing divinity stage. His strength was extraordinary as he could challenge many 7th level martial saints. When he had accumulated enough, he would be able to attempt a breakthrough into the immortal bridge stage. Yen Di said, I have already ordered Hu Ting to bring something to the vast ocean world and hand it over to Zhaoga. When he emerges from seclusion and returns to the world beyond worlds, I believe there will be an answer. As he had said, Ahu had already arrived in the vast ocean world. Many years had passed, and the current situation of the vast ocean world had already changed once more. While Broad Creed Mountain had yet to officially advance into the vast ocean world, the influence of Yen Zhaoga and the others still subtly influenced everything here. Changli Mountain had already gradually become the strongest power of the vast ocean world. Time flowed rapidly in the vast ocean world. More than 30 years had already passed since Yen Zhaoga had been active there that year. Changli Mountain's chief Gao Tianzhong had already been the current number 1 expert of the vast ocean world back then. In recent years, he had passed the position of chief to his disciple, while he himself had entered secluded cultivation. Hoping to break through into the 3rd level of the martial saint realm, the late merging avatar stage. Still, this did not affect the activities of Broad Creed Mountain's disciples here. After descending from the world beyond worlds and meeting with the Broad Creed Mountain elder, who was presiding over this place, Ahu prepared to head to the bewildering maze sea. Yen Zhaoga still chose to enter secluded cultivation there this time. When those of Changli Mountain learnt that someone had descended from the world beyond worlds, the current chief immediately sent someone to invite him over. The newcomer was a martial grandmaster who was very young, around 30 years of age. Having attained the martial grandmaster realm at such a young age, he was indisputably a genius of the vast ocean world. This youth was a disciple of Changli Mountain's current chief, a famous rising star of Changli Mountain and even the vast ocean world. Still, he was extremely courteous towards Ahu. Changli Mountain and Broad Creed Mountain had always been on good terms over the years. Not putting on airs, Ahu immediately followed the other party to pay a visit to Changli Mountain. Having met him once before, the current chief of Changli Mountain knew his identity and was slightly shocked. Congratulations, Mr. Hu, on transcending mortality and entering sainthood. Still, you have actually personally come to the vast ocean world. Could it be that the Traceless Cloud Dragon King has some instructions for you? Or is the Traceless Cloud Dragon King himself in the vast ocean world? Ahu chuckled. I indeed have an errand to attend to this time. It will not affect the overall situation of the vast ocean world. There is no need for Chief Song to think too much about it. Chief Song asked solemnly, Is there anything that you need my Changli Mountain's help with? Ahu shook his head. No need. I alone am enough. Send my regards to your master, Chief Gao, for me. Hearing Ahu say this, Chief Song nodded, asking no further. He wanted to invite Ahu to a banquet, But Ahu did not stay for long as he immediately took his leave. After personally sending Ahu off, Chief Song watched him leave as he muttered to himself, "I wonder what the traceless cloud dragon king wants to do." Beside him, his disciple asked curiously, "The first person of our vast ocean world to ascend to the world beyond worlds that year was that traceless cloud dragon king? I wonder what the situation is like now." "What situation?" Chief Song glanced back at his disciple. "That Mr. who just left is his retainer." The youth opened his mouth wide. "Retainer? Marshal Saint." Chapter 10:10. The youth was taken aback. He unconsciously looked in the direction in which Ahu had vanished, but he was already long gone. It was just that what his master had said still shocked him to the point of being unable to close his mouth. The reason was none other than the fact that the current who was shockingly already a martial saint. Even though the current situation of the vast ocean world was already very different from when Yin Zhaoge had been active in the past, a martial saint expert was still an indisputable hegemon. The youth had previously gone to invite Hu on Chief Song's orders. He had been respectful, as he dared not neglect his etiquette in the least. Even if Ahu was unrelated to Broad Creed Mountain, this would not change in the slightest, because he alone was sufficient to cause massive waves that surged to the heavens in the vast ocean world. This was still because Ahu had not fought much in the vast ocean world. Everyone's understanding of his personal strength was still limited to his cultivation base. In truth, it was still hard to say whether the current chief of Changli Mountain, Gao Tianzhong, who was currently in secluded cultivation, could defeat Ahu's cultivation base was lower than his. "Is that Mr. Tiger not an elder of Broad Creed Mountain?" The youth asked dazedly. Looking at his disciple, Chief Song sighed, not blaming him for his loss of composure. "It is not your fault that you are so shocked. When your master first saw Mr. Tiger that year, he was still a martial grandmaster." Chief Song sighed. "Still, he is very young relative to his cultivation base. I originally thought that he was one of Broad Creed Mountain's core disciples. Never would I have thought that he would actually be the personal servant of the traceless Cloud Dragon King." Chief Song shook his head repeatedly. The disbelieving expression on his disciple's face had yet to fade. Even a martial grandmaster, being a servant is really too humiliating, too spineless, too inconceivable, Chief Song said slowly, "especially when this person has actually already transcended mortality and entered sainthood. Yet from the looks of it, he still seems to be willing to be the servant of someone else. Is that even more unacceptable?" The youth nodded. Chief Song continued, "Have you ever thought about it from another angle? What kind of person could cause a martial grandmaster, even a martial saint, to be willing to be his servant? The traceless Cloud Dragon King is actually that terrifying." The youth felt that only the word terrifying could describe such a person. As time flowed quickly in the vast ocean world, this youth had only been born after Yin Zhaoge had left the vast ocean world. When he had entered Changli Mountain to learn martial arts, Yin Zhaoge had not been active in the vast ocean world besides secretly cultivating in seclusion. He had heard many rumors about Yin Zhaoge. However, just the rumors alone were not enough for him to truly understand and feel Yin Zhaoge. In recent years, Broad Creed Mountain had geniuses like Su Fei, Shi Jun, Ing Longtu, and Si Kongqing, who had been active in the vast ocean sea, possessing shocking strength. However, most of them had left the vast ocean world before their cultivation bases had reached the peak. All along, Broad Creed Mountain had only used this place as a tempering ground for their younger disciples. Of the experts of Broad Creed Mountain who presided over this place, the one with the highest cultivation base was the Grand Elder Zhang Kuan, who had finally broken through his bottleneck of several decades ago, transcending mortality and entering sainthood. As a martial saint, he naturally could not be underestimated. However, Zhang Kuan did not have a flamboyant personality. Most of the time, he advanced and retreated alongside Changli Mountain. The current Changli Mountain was the strongest power of the vast ocean world, often needing the combined might of a few other sects to be able to keep it in check. As a disciple of Changli Mountain, while this youth could only sigh emotionally at the excellence of Broad Creed Mountain's martial practitioners, he still felt a great sense of honor towards himself and Changli Mountain. He was confident in himself, taking pride in his clan. Having heard of Yin Zhaoga's various legendary stories, he had more of this as a goal, firmly believing that he would be able to attain such heights one day as well. As a martial practitioner with his own beliefs and great ambitions, it was very normal for him to have such thoughts. It would be strange if he did not. However, now that the tip of the iceberg had been revealed, this youth instantly felt horrified. What kind of person could make a martial grandmaster or even a martial saint willingly serve him as a servant? Just thinking about this question a little deeper, he felt dizzy as he dared not think about it any further. Glancing at his disciple, Chief Song sighed inwardly. He naturally did not want to intentionally deal a blow to his disciple. The other party was the most outstanding disciple of Changli Mountain's younger generation, a pillar of their sect. However, some horizons had to be opened at the end of the day. Some things had to be experienced at the end of the day. He had gone through such things that year as well. Swiveling his head and gazing in the direction in which Ahu had vanished, Chief Song had a complex expression on his face. Both of them claimed to be the 5 peaks of Taoism of pre-Great Calamity times, yet their fates are vastly different. I wonder what sort of wondrous land the people of Broad Creed Mountain speak of is in the world beyond worlds. I really want to experience it for myself. Amidst his endless emotions, an all-encompassing radiance suddenly shot up from the depths of Changli Mountain, shooting straight into the horizon. Chief Song and his disciple were both shocked at first before they were overjoyed. Master has left seclusion. Grand Master has left seclusion. The current chief of Changli Mountain, the current #1 expert of the vast ocean world, Gao Tianzhong, had finally left seclusion today after many years of seclusion. All of Changli Mountain rejoiced at the fact that Gao Tianzhong had successfully ascended to the 3rd level of the martial saint realm, the late merging avatar stage. With this, Changli Mountain's position as the #1 sect of the vast ocean world was completely solidified. With this, even if the other powers of the vast ocean world joined forces, they might not be able to withstand the pressure brought about by Changli Mountain. Speaking of this, we really have to thank Broad Creed Mountain. Chief Song regained his wits as he said emotionally, "If not for the fact that we obtained that treasure that only exists in the world beyond worlds from them, Master would probably not have been able to succeed so quickly." The youth beside him said excitedly, "According to the words of those of Broad Creed Mountain, as long as Grand Master can advance a single step further, he will be able to ascend to the world beyond worlds as well. At that time, the future prospects of our Changli Mountain will be even greater. Everything is possible." Chief Song said, "How can it be so simple? The world beyond worlds has as many experts as there are clouds." First, not speaking of others, Broad Creed Mountain's Heavenly Rock, Elder Su, who once resided at our Changli Mountain, was still a martial grandmaster when Master had already transcended mortality and entered sainthood then. However, there was news from Broad Creed Mountain a few years ago that Su Tianpeng had already attained the 3rd level of the martial saint realm, even faster than Master. Hearing his words, the youth had just wanted to say something when his body suddenly shook. He was already a martial grandmaster now, as he would be able to stabilize himself amidst tempestuous waves and tempestuous storms, maintaining his balance. However, that shake just now had nearly caused him to directly fall over. Even Chief Song's body shook as he nearly toppled over. This shaking did not originate from Changli Mountain beneath their feet. It was not even limited to the directionless sea, where Changli Mountain was located. Instead, it was the entire vast ocean world that was shaking together at this moment. A great, irrepressible fear arose within the hearts of all the vast ocean martial practitioners. It was as if they were facing the end of the world. In truth, if this shaking continued uncontrollably, the vast ocean world would be facing waves even more terrifying than the shaking of the dragon tomb that year. In the past, each time the dragon tomb had shaken, the vast ocean world would experience a great tribulation, withering once. Now that the dragon tomb had been broken, the tribulation had ceased. However, the shaking now might cause the entire vast ocean world to collapse completely, reduced to dust. Chapter 10:11. What happened? Sect leader Song and his disciple were both shocked, but they also felt a sense of despair, as if they were powerless to resist the will of heaven. Has anything special happened recently? A deep male voice suddenly rang out. Sect Master Song and his disciple looked over and saw that it was the old sect master of Changli Mountain, Gao Tianzhong. Unable to congratulate his master for coming out of seclusion, sect leader Song hurriedly said, "If there is something special, Mr. Tiger, a disciple of the traceless cloud Dragon King, has come to our vast sea. He just left not long ago. Huang Hudding has either come here on the orders of traceless cloud Yen, or—" Gao Tianzhong's pupils dilated slightly, "or traceless cloud Yen was in the vast ocean world previously." The young man panicked. All this commotion is caused by the traceless cloud Dragon King. Does he want to destroy the vast ocean world? Sect leader Song rebuked. He has no reason to do that. There was a similar incident in the past, but it wasn't as big as it is now. Gao Tianzhong looked in the direction of the bewildering Maze Sea. Previously, Yen Zhaoga had entered secluded cultivation there. That day, in the bewildering Maze Sea, a pillar of light shot into the sky and illuminated the world. The entire vast ocean world bore witness to Yen Zhaoga's ascension. But today, the tremors did not come from the bewildering Maze Sea or any specific place. Instead, it was the entire vast ocean world that was shaking. However, Gao Tianzhong was still looking in the direction of the bewildering Maze Sea. Chief Song and his disciple both understood. Was it because the traceless cloud Dragon King had transcended the third level of the martial saint realm and ascended to the world beyond worlds that year? Gao Tianzhong said, "This time, perhaps it will be a similar situation. Let us wait patiently." Even if they wanted to do something, there was nothing they could do. If this tribulation really wanted to destroy the vast ocean world, even Gao Tianzhong, who had just left seclusion as a late-merging avatar martial saint, would be powerless to resist it, as he would similarly be unable to survive. Even if all the current experts of the vast ocean world joined hands, it would still be futile, as everyone could only close their eyes and wait for death. The sky-collapsing tribulation would cause the sky to collapse, and all living beings under the sky would be destroyed together. However, this calamity did not last for too long. Very quickly, the tremors calmed down. Everything returned to normal. Everything that everyone had just experienced with fear and trepidation seemed like an illusion. It really is Yen Cloud's trace descending into the vast ocean. Gao Tianzhong was confident. The people of Changli Mountain looked at each other, their expressions complicated. In the end, they all sighed in unison. Those who had seen Yen Zhaoga in the past all felt as though they were in a dream now, as it seemed even more unreal than the Great Tribulation and earthquake from before. Meanwhile, Ahu, who had previously bid farewell to Chief Song and his disciple and headed to the bewildering Maze Sea, naturally sensed the changes in the vast ocean world as well. After being stunned for a moment, he opened his mouth and laughed. He was overjoyed. Young Master has succeeded. After the tremors disappeared, Ahu rushed to the bewildering Maze Sea. At this moment, This place no longer resembled how it had been when Yen Zhaoge had broken through space to see true divinity and ascended to the world beyond worlds earlier. After the quaking of the entire vast ocean world had ceased, the bewildering maze seemed to have regained its usual calm. Just as Ahu was gazing into the distance, a voice suddenly rang out behind him. "Why did you come down as well?" "Young master." Turning his head, Ahu saw Yen Zhaoge standing right behind him. Ahu asked excitedly, "Young master, have you also ascended the immortal bridge like the family head?" Yen Zhaoge smiled, not saying anything. However, in Ahu's eyes, Yen Zhaoge's figure seemed to have vanished before him, replaced by a starry cosmos. The numerous stars circulated within this cosmos, intersecting and forming their own trajectories, yet also influencing one another. Other than being unable to see the birth and destruction of stars, it was like he was facing an actual sea of stars in the cosmos. On this day, Yen Zhaoge successfully ascended the immortal bridge, stepping into the 7th level of the Martial Saint realm, the early immortal bridge stage, as he officially began his path towards the immortal realm. Ahu was filled with admiration as he only regained his wits after a long time, hurriedly saying, "Family had said that the matter you asked him to investigate before entering secluded cultivation has come to an end. He asked me to deliver it to you." Oh, hearing his words, Yen Zhaoge's eyes lit up. Ahu handed over a jade coin to Yen Zhaoge. Seeing it, Yen Zhaoge saw that it was precisely the one he had given to Yen Di that year. After glancing through its contents, a strange light flickered within Yen Zhaoge's eyes as he fell into deep thought. After a long time, Yen Zhaoge stroked his lower chin as he muttered to himself, "Seems like it's going to work." Now, as time passed and the quaking of the vast ocean world ceased, the various vast ocean martial practitioners all calmed down as they saw the scenes of the end of the world vanish. While there seemed to be no abnormalities occurring over at the bewildering maze sea this time, everyone simultaneously hurried over to it. A newly ascended 3rd level martial saint, Gao Tianzhong, the strongest native martial practitioner of the vast ocean world, was the first to arrive even though he was not the closest. When he saw Yen Zhaoge, Gao Tianzhong was greatly shocked. At this moment, the Yen Zhaoge that appeared in his field of vision resembled a mortal, completely ordinary and unremarkable. Not only was there no true essence emanating from his body at all, the qi and blood of his entire body also appeared weak and light, as it was not as powerful as those who cultivated in martial arts at all. From the looks of it, even a martial practitioner who had just begun cultivating in the most basic stance arts for a few months would be more powerful than Yen Zhaoge. Yet, it was precisely such a person who stood in the air above the bewildering maze sea like it was flat ground, as though nothing had happened. Gao Tianzhong himself could also lock his true essence and not let it leak out, looking like he had returned to his natural state, lifting something heavy as if it were light as he stood in the air. Still, he was clear that he was actually still able to emanate his true essence, thus being able to hover in midair. It was just that he was able to use the smallest amount of strength to easily accomplish what others would have to expend all their strength to do. Moving 1,000 caddies with 4 ounces of strength was very miraculous. Still, 4 ounces of strength was still needed to move 1,000 caddies at the end of the day. Yet, the Yen Zhaoge before him truly did not leak any true essence at all. His actions completely defied logic. Seeing Yen Zhaoge like this, Gao Tianzhong was rather at a loss as to how he should speak. As the other vast ocean world martial practitioners arrived in succession, seeing Yen Zhaoge's appearance, they did not pay much attention to it at first. Still, when they had gradually come to their senses, shocked looks appeared on all of their faces. It was Yen Zhaoge, whose expression was as per usual as he smiled and nodded towards them. "Long time no see, everyone. How have you been?" He extended his fingers, making a grabbing motion within the air. The surrounding heavens and earth instantly distorted. This Yin has some matters that I need to attend to in the world beyond worlds. I won't be catching up with you all this time. If we have the time, next time, we can slowly chat again. The world before the eyes of Gao Tianzhong and the others blurred as they saw a continuous chain of mountains actually appear out of thin air. A continuous chain of mountains had appeared on the surface of this bewildering maze sea. On one of the mountain peaks, a terrifying storm was rampaging. It was precisely Tribulation Wind Mountain. The wound of the sky that led from the vast ocean world to the world beyond worlds was located in the sky above Tribulation Wind Mountain. Moving mountains and shifting seas was something that even martial saints could do. Still, that was something that could only be done at a relatively close distance. Still, what shocked Gao Tianzhong and the others was that Tribulation Wind Mountain was on a continent far away from the vast ocean, being as far as the eye could see from the bewildering maze sea. At this moment, it was actually like Yen Zhaoge had moved it to the bewildering maze sea. Wasn't it said that when they descended, their cultivation bases would be suppressed to the third level of the martial saint realm? All the vast ocean world martial practitioners had blank looks on their faces. Chapter 10:12. Yen Zhaoge's current cultivation base had indeed been suppressed to the third level of the martial saint realm. Still, his vision, knowledge, and methods had never been something that martial practitioners of the third level of the martial saint realm could compare to. This included himself as well. As his cultivation increased day by day, Yen Zhaoge's powerful theoretical reserves were also unceasingly being converted into actual experience, no longer remaining on paper. There was an intrinsic difference between the two as they were transformed along with Yen Zhaoge's own growth. The stability of the spatial boundaries of the vast ocean world was far inferior to that of the world beyond worlds. Therefore, Yen Zhaoge was able to distort the spatial distance here, causing Tribulation Wind Mountain that was far away to appear on this bewildering maze sea. After all, if the current Yen Zhaoge were to slightly release his power, while he would be repelled by the power of dimensions and be unable to remain here, a single thought from him would be enough to reduce this place to nothing. Waving goodbye to Gao Tianzhong and the others, Yen Zhaoge strode forward, his figure rising into the air as he had already stepped into the massive crevice above the sky that resembled a rift. Following closely behind, Ahu wielded a heavenly connection jade, entering the wound of the sky alongside Yen Zhaoge. Accompanied by the disappearance of the two, the wound of the sky in the sky above also vanished along with it. The Tribulation Wind Mountain that had been in the air above the bewildering maze sea had also disappeared. The space was like a picture that had been curled up, twitching. After a short while, everything returned to normal. The bewildering maze ocean was covered in layers of mist while the tides rose and fell below, and it was just like before. At this moment, Gao Tianzhong and the others seemed to wake up from a dream. While Yen Zhaoge was already nowhere to be seen, they all simultaneously bowed towards the sky up above. It was as if he was worshipping a god. Just what cultivation level has the traceless cloud dragon king reached? Everyone had the same thought in mind, and it lingered for a long time. There was no lack of enemies present, but at this moment, no one had any thoughts of finding trouble with the other. They were all feeling complicated and indescribable. Gao Tianzhong, looked around and finally broke the silence. We're witnessing a living legend together. Yen Zhaoge, who had already returned to the world beyond worlds through the wound of the sky, was unable to hear the exclamations of those of the vast ocean world. What he was currently pondering about was still the world beyond worlds' royal reed sea, regarding the matter that he had entrusted to his father and the clan before descending to the vast ocean world. The result had already been achieved. For Yen Zhaoge, who had just emerged from seclusion and successfully ascended the immortal bridge, It could be said to be a double blessing. Now that I think about it, the spiritual chi circulation of the earth veins in the Royal Reed Sea being extraordinary as the border between the South and the South can also be expected. After returning to the world beyond worlds, Yen Zhaoge didn't cause such a huge commotion like when he had experienced seeing divinity and ascended previously. Everything seemed calm and natural. Looking at the slightly rippling sea of the phoenix-bearing region before him, Yen Zhaoge pondered whether it is the southern blazing heaven territory or the southeastern yang heaven territory. The spiritual chi veins of the earth veins are both blazing hot and yang. Where the two meet, it would be even more so. Circumference mountain of the southern blazing heaven territory should have been in a similar situation. However, there was a dynasty river that ran through Circumference Mountain from north to south. With its abundant water chi, it affected the flow of spiritual chi in the earth veins there. With that, the situation there was different from that of the Royal Reed Sea. Choosing this place to set up the heaven-bearing Effecate formation was indeed not without reason. Yen Zhaoge muttered to himself. Ahu asked, "Young master, are you going to take a look around the Royal Reed Sea next?" Yen Zhaoge nodded. "That's right. I still have to inspect the area first before I can actually make the arrangements. I was only ordered to deliver something to you this time. Never had I thought that you would just so happen to have emerged from seclusion." Ahu scratched his head. Family head and the old chief previously unanimously decided that they would wait for you to emerge from seclusion and return to the world beyond worlds before officially holding the opening ceremony. Yen Zhaoge smiled. "Oh, is that so?" Ahu gave a simple and honest laugh. Family had successfully advanced a step further earlier, already reaching the 8th level of the Martial Saint realm, the mid-immortal bridge stage. That really couldn't be any better. Yen Zhaoge looked overjoyed. He raised his head and thought for a moment before saying, "The situation is still unclear. We still have to make the best use of our time. Still, there is no need for our own arrangements to be affected by others. Prioritize yourself and deal with whatever comes. The time has long since come for our sect to open its doors in the world beyond worlds." Yen Zhaoge said to, how about this? I will walk around the Royal Reed, see myself. After everything has been settled, I will naturally return. You should first report to my father, Grand Master, and the others. Do whatever you need to do. Everything can be arranged accordingly. You can send out the invitations to the guests now." Ahu answered, "Yes, young master." As Yen Zhaoge traversed the Royal Reed Sea, Ahu returned to Broad Creed Mountain in the Spirit Inheritance region. Receiving Ahu's report, Broad Creed Mountain was naturally overjoyed. After Yen Di, Broad Creed Mountain had a second Martial Saint expert who had ascended the Immortal Bridge. Also, it was Yen Zhaoge who possessed shocking strength. The entire Broad Creed Mountain had been flourishing in recent years, accumulating strength as it was increasingly showing signs of soaring. Yen Zhaoge's strength and potential had always left everyone sighing in admiration. As his potential gradually transformed into greater and greater strength, his prestige grew as well as everyone's trust in him grew firmer and firmer. Yen Di, Yuan Zhengfeng, and the others had no objections after learning of Yen Zhaoge's current plans. The threat of powerful enemies like the Heaven Emperor and the Southern Exalt still existed, as it was unknown when they would arrive. While Broad Creed Mountain would not be easily shaken by the outside world, it was impossible for Yen Zhaoge and Broad Creed Mountain to ignore this latent threat. The official opening of Broad Creed Mountain was currently a major matter of utmost importance. If they wanted everything to go smoothly, they naturally had to make more preparations in order to be confident. As Yen Zhaoge traversed the Royal Reed Sea, all of Broad Creed Mountain began operating as well. The envoys dispatched to various lands began sending invitations for the opening ceremony to the various guests. The news that Broad Creed Mountain was about to officially open its doors and accept disciples began spreading into the surroundings with the Royal Reed Sea as its center. It was not just in the southeastern Yangheaven territory. It was similarly widespread in the neighboring southern blazing Heaven Territory Circumference Mountain and other places. As the lord of the southeastern Yangheaven territory, Golden Court Mountain, who had always been on good terms with Broad Creed Mountain, would naturally receive the invitation. The southeastern swords mistress, who presided over the border between the two territories, was the first to learn of the news. Even though she had always been valiant despite her age, not losing out to men, she was still slightly taken aback upon receiving the invitation. The Golden Court Mountain martial practitioners who were with her exchanged looks, not knowing what to say for a time. These people of Broad Creed Mountain are really magnanimous. After a long while, someone said disbelievingly, as soon as the Heaven Emperor and the Southern Exalt return, they will definitely find trouble with them. Under such circumstances, opening their headquarters so ostentatiously, are they looking down on the Heaven Emperor and the others? Chapter 10:13. After receiving the news that Broad Creed Mountain was about to officially accept disciples, the Golden Court Mountain martial practitioners were first silent before an uproar ensued. Could it be that Broad Creed Mountain wants to move their entire sect to the circumference mountain range of the southern blazing Heaven territory? They would not be able to set up the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation in the Royal Reed Sea. Someone asked, still, even if they did, they might not be able to resist the Heaven Emperor and the Southern Exalt, right? Someone pondered. It is said that the immortal artifact left behind by the dim Radiant Emperor has fallen into Broad Creed Mountain's hands. Broad Creed Mountain has never denied it. Could this be where their confidence lies? Everyone was saying that Broad Creed Mountain had obtained the dim Radiant Emperor's legacy, the legendary immortal artifact. It was just that no one had actually seen it before. In the great battle beneath Broad Creed Mountain that year, Yen Zhaoge, Yen Di, and the others had joined forces to slay Guan Lide, Shun Lingzi, King Xuanqing, and Daoist Shi, achieving glorious battle accomplishments that were unbelievable to onlookers. At the time, many had believed that it was due to the immortal artifact. Still, Yen Zhaoge had rampaged through the south afterwards, killing his way back to the southeast and shocking the world with his battles at Vast Spirit Mountain and Circumference Mountain. Most people were beginning to view Yen Zhaoge's strength seriously, even as they judged Yen Di and the other Broad Creed Mountain martial practitioners. Everyone began to grow cautious as well. More and more details were unearthed, such as how Yen Di had slain King Xuanmu of the 6th level of the Martial Saint Realm when he had just ascended to the world beyond worlds. Comparing this, everyone was stunned to discover that Broad Creed Mountain did not just have a single vicious character other than Yen Zhaoge. In recent years, Su Fei, Xia Guang, Ing Longtu, Sikong Qing, and the other young Broad Creed Mountain martial practitioners had similarly achieved glorious battle accomplishments. Everyone was gradually getting used to the strength of Broad Creed Mountain martial practitioners now. Looking back at the great battle beneath Broad Creed Mountain now, many people guessed that no immortal artifact had participated in that battle. Seeing how Yen Zhaoge had fought his way back from the south to the southeast with no trace of an immortal artifact as well, everyone began to wonder again. Perhaps the news that the Radiant Light sect had spread that year was fake. While the Radiant Light sect was of the direct lineage of the Dim Radiant sect, their relationship with Broad Creed Mountain had been extremely bad as well. Still, they all knew that Yen Zhaoge had really obtained the immortal artifact back then from the Dim Radiant sect from the Dim Radiant Mausoleum. Still, everyone of Golden Court Mountain knew that Yen Zhaoge had truly obtained the legacy of the Dim Radiant Emperor within the Dim Radiant Mausoleum. At this moment, everyone thought of this point. It's not an immortal armament. It's said that it's only an embryonic immortal armament. The southeastern sword's mistress shook her head. When the others heard this, they all frowned. An immortal artifact embryo has a long way to go in order to become an immortal artifact. That is a treasure that can only be refined by a true immortal great emperor who has pushed open the gate of immortality. Even if ordinary people get their hands on it, they won't be able to completely refine it, right? The southeastern sword's mistress said slowly, "Normally speaking, this is indeed the case." She gazed towards the horizon in the direction of Broad Creed Mountain. Other than the news that Broad Creed Mountain is preparing to hold its official opening ceremony, it is also mentioned that the Yen father and son have both ascended the immortal bridge. Everyone around him nodded in unison. Their expressions were filled with admiration and complicated emotions. Virtually everyone present had personally witnessed Yen Zhaoga's journey from the world beyond world's royal reed sea all the way to this day. In the short span of a dozen years, he had already walked a path that many people couldn't finish in their entire lives. Considering his current cultivation base and lifespan, the amount of time he had spent on this journey had been extremely short. Someone said, looking at Yen Zhaoga's strength as a late-seeing divinity martial saint, if he were to establish the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation at Circumference Mountain now that he has ascended the immortal bridge, he might still be able to protect himself. Still, he would probably not be a match for the Heaven Emperor. The address indicated on the invitation letter to us is Broad Creed Mountain in the Spirit Inheritance region of the Royal Reed Sea. The southeastern sword's mistress said slowly. The martial practitioners of the southeast exchanged looks. Without the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation, and with the immortal artifact still in its embryonic form, what should we do? One of them finally smiled bitterly. If the Heaven Emperor has returned, the Brocade Emperor should have returned as well. I wonder if the Brocade Emperor will make a move then. Other than the southeastern sword's mistress and the others who were near the border of the two territories, Broad Creed Mountain had naturally sent invitations to Golden Court Mountain as well. While they did not know when the southeastern Exalt Chao Jie would return to Golden Court Mountain, Broad Creed Mountain naturally had to extend an invitation out of courtesy. The same was true for Kunlun Mountain's ingenious Flying Peak's Red Lotus Cliff. With the Brocade Emperor yet to return, Fu Ting was in secluded cultivation and unable to leave. Still, the ingenious Flying Peak martial practitioners who had received the Brocade Emperor's instructions earlier immediately expressed that they would be sending a representative to Broad Creed Mountain to observe the ceremony when the time came. It was not just limited to the southeastern Yang Heaven territory, as all powers who were on friendly terms with Yen Zhaoga and Broad Creed Mountain received invitations as well. For example, the chief of the Central June Heaven Territory's Heavenly Hut Mountain's Jade Mountain sect, Lu Xiangtong, had received an invitation as well. It was instead Cloud Pavilion Mountain's profound remnant locale of the Northern Profound Heaven Territory's lineage that Yen Zhaoga, Yen Di, and the others had their own considerations. The Northern Exalt's granddaughter, Guan Yulua, was on extremely good terms with Broad Creed Mountain's disciple, Feng Yunsheng. Still, this was a personal friendship. As her identity was too special, whatever she did would often be seen by others as being on the Northern Exalt's orders. Meanwhile, the Northern Exalt had no conflicts with the Heaven Emperor or the Southern Exalt. If it was just Feng Yunsheng alone, he might have protected her on account of the fact that she had saved his granddaughter. Still, Yen Zhaoga would not feel so good about helping Yen Zhaoga and Broad Creed Mountain stand against the Heaven Emperor just because of this. If he sent an invitation to profound remnant locale, even if it was Guan Yulua alone, the outcome would still be unknown, as it might put the other party in a difficult position. With Feng Yunsheng coincidentally not present, Broad Creed Mountain ultimately decided not to send an invitation to profound remnant locale. Still, Yen Zhaoga still sent a personal letter, asking Guan Yulua to help him find out Feng Yunxing's exact whereabouts in the north. This way, the awkwardness of whether or not she would come to Broad Creed Mountain could be avoided. Instead, Broad Creed Mountain sent an invitation over to Green Sky Mountain's grave Thunder Palace of the Northeastern Sky Heaven Territory. As for whether the Northeastern Exalt Lu Jinggu would accept the invitation, that would have to depend on his intentions. As compared to the guests that Broad Creed Mountain had invited, those who received the news instantly erupted. Countless youngsters and even famed solitary practitioners began anticipating the day when Broad Creed Mountain would officially open its doors. Ever since Yan Zhaoga's shocking battles at Vast Spirit Mountain and Circumference Mountain that year, countless people had been waiting for this day. Meanwhile, illusory coming peak of Kunlun Mountain of the Central June Heaven Territory and Phoenix Ritual Mountain's Wudong Slope of the Southern Blazing Heaven Territory naturally received the news as well. Apart from them, Nongli Mountain of the Western Turtle Heaven Territory, 3-Foot Mountain of the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory, and countless sects of the Southern Blazing Heaven Territory all received the news as well. Many people ground their teeth hatefully. Phoenix Ritual Mountain's Wudong Slope, who had suffered the most grievous casualties at Yan Zhaoga's hands that year, were even more agitated. Just as everyone's hearts were blazing with fury, they all felt Phoenix Ritual Mountain shake as a whole. In the northern sky, a sea of flames obscured the sun as Phoenix Ritual Mountain appeared. The spirits of the Wudong Slope martial practitioners simultaneously rose. The Southern Exalt Zhuang Shun had finally returned to the Southern Blazing Heaven Territory. Chapter 1014. Having left the Southern Blazing Heaven Territory and headed for the Central June Heaven Territory, the Southern Exalt Zhuang Shun had finally returned to Phoenix Ritual Mountain's Wudong Slope after being gone for 8 or 9 years. For mortals, their lifespans were merely 100 years. 8 or 9 years was already not a short period of time. However, for experts with high cultivation bases, they might very well enter secluded cultivation for more than 10 years in a single time. The last time the Southern Exalt Zhuangshen had entered secluded cultivation, close to 20 years had passed. It was just that there had never been a time where Zhuangshen felt as though things had remained the same, but people had changed. Currently, he was seated on the main seat of the great hall, gazing unblinkingly at those of his lineage before him. Zhuangshen's appearance had not changed in the least as compared to that year. He was still lean and rather handsome as he looked to be in his 30s. His snow-white hair was combed into a simple bun. However, looking at everyone before him, Zhuangshen's expression was heavy. His in-laws, his junior apprentice brother, Blazing King Peng, he was nowhere to be seen. While their relationship was not as close as Peng He's, his senior apprentice brother, Treasured Branch Suppressing Peak, Zhang Shuren, who he trusted greatly, was also nowhere to be seen. The disciple he valued the most, the one he had painstakingly groomed, Phoenix pupils Yuan Xianqing, was also nowhere to be seen. Apart from that, there were many others of Wudong Slope who would never be able to appear in this great hall ever again. Finally, there was also his own son, Zhuang Chaohui. Zhuangshen looked at the desolate hall before him, not speaking for a long time. A middle-aged man in the garb of a Confucian scholar said, "Senior apprentice brother Zhang and junior apprentice brother Peng are no longer here. The southeast is powerful. We can only defend Phoenix Ritual Mountain and await your return, senior apprentice brother Zhuang." Looking at that middle-aged Confucian, Zhuangshen said slowly, "It has been hard on you, junior apprentice brother Mao." The middle-aged Confucian lowered his head, saying, "Chief, please make a decision." This person was naturally the sole surviving bigwig of Phoenix Ritual Mountain's Wudong Slope, Phoenix Crying Southern Territory, Mao Yuanqing alongside Peng He and Zhang Shuren. He and Peng He had come from the same lineage as the Southern Exalt Zhuangshun. Several hundred years ago, when the previous generation was in charge of Fengyi Mountain and Zhuangshun's master was in charge, Mao Yuanqing was actually the most valued successor. At that time, compared to Zhuangshun, their master had always favored Mao Yuanqing. He had even wanted Mao Yuanqing to take over his legacy and take over Wudong Slope. But later on, Zhuangshun, who was relatively ordinary in his youth, grew stronger and stronger and finally overtook him. Time, Zhuang time, him. Time. However, it was also true that Phoenix Ritual Mountain's Wudong Slope's lineage had flourished in his hands, and the Phoenix True Form Scroll had become even more complete and profound. Later on, when Zhuangshun ascended to the mortal Exalt realm, Fengyi Mountain also reached the peak of its history. Shuren had for time, and Huang God time Mountain Zeng Mountain to the human Zhang time on time to time on time, Zhang time, on time, am, under time, ZT for time. If it really was a tough job, Zhuangshun's most valued disciple, Yuan Xiancheng, would not have accompanied him. When Zhuangshun had left for the central Junheaven territory, it had been the blazing King Peng, he who had stood guard over Phoenix Ritual Mountain's Wudong Slope. Ever since that year, Mao Yuanqing himself had actually kept a low profile. The phoenix-crying southern territory of the past seemed rather undeserving of its name now. This time, it was only after Zhang time and Peng he had perished that Mao Yuanqing had returned to Wudong Slope to manage the situation. As an expert of Wudong Slope who was second only to Zhuangshun, Mao Yuanqing had instead kept an even lower profile. Make a decision? Zhuangshun's expression was calm, no ripples visible on it at all. Still, all the Wudong Slope martial practitioners present felt as though the entire world they were in seemed to be ablaze. Before them, a fiery phoenix flapped its wings and cried. Still, tears of blood were clearly flowing from its eyes. Seeing the illusion of the phoenix weeping blood, everyone, Mao Yuanqing included, fell silent out of fear. As the illusion vanished, Zhuangshun remained expressionless, his emotions seemingly having not fluctuated in the least. Still, everyone knew that that illusory scene just now was actually the true expression of Zhuangshun's inner thoughts. A total of 37 people of my Wudong Slope died at the hands of that scum surnamed Yan. Zhuangshun stood up. Amongst them were two late immortal bridge martial saints, the disciple I am most proud of and the most outstanding descendant of our sect's younger generation. There was also my own son. He looked at Mao Yuanqing. If I do not return this time, junior apprentice brother Mao, you will take over as chief. Mao Yuanqing lowered his head. I am willing to follow senior apprentice brother as we head to the southeast together. What are you saying? Zhuangshun frowned. The lineage of our sect cannot be broken. Mao Yuanqing raised his head, looking at Zhuangshun. Zhuangshun said, regardless of how Xiancheng and the others died, the truth is that they all perished at Circumference Mountain. While I have returned, Chao Jie has returned as well. If we battle at Circumference Mountain, the outcome will be hard to predict. Mao Yuanqing was silent for a moment before he said, then, senior apprentice brother, why must you, Zhuangshun said calmly, in order to take revenge for master that year, I dared to battle a 9th-level martial saint as a 7th-level martial saint. Now that I am in charge of the South, could it be that the older one is, the more cowardly they become? Mao Yuanqing was silent for a while before he said, is this why you are Phoenix soaring the 9 heavens while I am only Phoenix crying southern territory? I may die earlier than you. Zhuangshun said mildly, While I am stronger than you, there are others who are stronger than me. Still, do not think that I have been blinded by rage. I am calmer than I have ever been. Revenge at all costs. Revenge comes first, then at all costs. Hearing Zhuang Shun's words, the spirits of Mao Yuansheng and the other Wudong Slope martial practitioners rose slightly. Now, the space outside of Wudong Mountain shook like ripples on water. A figure walked out from within. His arrival did not alarm anyone of Wudong Slope, as only Zhuang Shun sensed it. Brother Lang has arrived. Zhuang Shun apologizes for not welcoming you earlier. Brother Lang? Lang. Hearing this, Mao Yuansheng and the others were all taken aback before they rejoiced. The Western Exalt has arrived, Zhuang Shun said mildly. Even without the matter of Chao Wei and Xiancheng, I have invited Brother Lang to my Wudong Slope as a guest to discuss the matter of conquering the southeast. Amidst his words, a middle-aged man walked in. Brother Zhuang, I have heard about the matter. My condolences. Seeing him, the Wudong Slope martial practitioners all bowed. Greetings, Western Exalt. The person who had come was none other than the Lord of the Western Turtle Heaven Territory, the chief of Nongli Mountain, the Western Exalt Lang Qing. Since Brother Lang already knows, I will speak no further. Zhuang Shun said, I wonder if Brother Lang can lend me a hand. Chapter 10:15. The Western Exalt Lang Qing's attire was somewhat similar to Mao Yuansheng's, as they were both dressed like scholars. Still, he had an additional Taoist robe on top. He had 3 strands of long black beard on his chin that were neatly combed. We have a common enemy, Chao Jia. Lang Qing said, the newly risen Broad Creed Mountain is an unexpected variable. From the looks of it now, this Broad Creed Mountain is just like a watchdog reared by Chao Jia. As long as this nail is not pulled out first, Golden Court Mountain will always be stable. As Lang Qing spoke, he slowly shook his head. I'm also very willing to pull out this nail first, but not now. Zhuang Shun did not feel that Lang Qing was evading the responsibility. Instead, he calmly asked, Brother Lang, have you heard any news? That's right. I have come to inform you this time. Lang Qing nodded. Fu Jinxiu has returned to the world beyond worlds. Also, news from Ingenious Flying Peak says that he intends to protect Yan Zhaoga and Broad Creed Mountain. The moment these words came out, the faces of all the Wudong Slope martial artists present sank. The Brocade Emperor's clear stance had surpassed their predictions. But no one questioned it. The Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia had a close relationship with the Brocade Emperor, while the Western Exalt Lang Qing was like fire and water with Chao Jia. He could also be considered a close friend of the Brocade Emperor Fu Yunxi. After the Brocade Emperor had failed to mediate between Chao Jia and Lang Qing, he generally maintained a neutral stance of not helping either side. But to the Wudong Slope, this was an insurmountable mountain. Zhuang Shun asked slowly, when did this happen? It's almost the same time as when we came out of seclusion. Lang Qing replied. Clearly, he already had a plan. The Heaven Emperor has yet to return from the void outskirts. If we go to the southeast now, we'll only be running into a wall in vain. Lang Qing's words were relatively polite. For Lang Qing, who was on rather good terms with the Brocade Emperor, it might just be hitting a wall. Still, for Zhuang Shun and Wudong Slope, it would probably not be as simple as hitting a wall. Someone blurted out, if we only make a move against Broad Creed Mountain and not Golden Court Mountain, would the Brocade Emperor act as well? Lang Qing was not offended by his sudden interruption and only nodded slowly. That Wudong Slope martial artist's expression suddenly changed. Slightly, could it be that some of the rumors are true? The Brocade Emperor wanted to select a husband for Red Lotus Fu. The one you're interested in is that little thief surnamed Yen. Upon hearing this, Zhuang also looked at Lang Qing with a probing expression. While all of Wudong Slope hated Yan Zhaoge to the core, they had to admit that he was probably the most outstanding genius of the world beyond world's younger generation in recent years. The name of the fallen deity was widely spread even in the southern blazing heaven territory. I can't be sure, but it shouldn't be. Lang Qing shook his head. The news spread by Ingenious Flying Peak is that Yan Zhaoge once saved Fu Ting. Therefore, they have to return this favor. Zhuang pondered for a moment before saying, the Brocade Emperor might not be able to act. Oh, Lang Qing looked at Zhuang in surprise. Beside him, Mao Yuanshan coughed lightly as he added, it is not that your information is wrong, Western Exalt. Chief means that while the Brocade Emperor might have the intention to act, he might not be free to do so when the time comes. Lang Qing frowned. What do you mean? Zhuang whispered a few words, and Lang Qing's expression changed. I was just about to ask Brother Lang to help me see if my method is feasible, Zhuang said. Lang Qing pondered for a moment before slowly nodding. There is a high chance of success. He turned to look at Zhuang. It looks like Brother Zhuang has been planning this for a long time. Zhuang said calmly, it was for Golden Court Mountain back then. While the Heaven Emperor had a conflict with the Brocade Emperor, I still had to make more preparations. Still, it is for that Yan Zhaoge and Broad Creed Mountain now. There is no need to be disappointed, Brother Lang. If I do not guess wrong, Chao Jie will definitely act to assist Yan Zhaoge and Broad Creed Mountain this time. We still share the same enemy. Lang Qing said, Brother Zhuang's words are not wrong. Still, since you have such a move, I am more inclined to wait a while longer. Zhuang nodded. Wait for the Heaven Emperor to return as well? That's right. A gentleman's revenge is never too late even after 10 years. Moreover, there is no need for 10 years at all. Lang Qing said, if the Brocade Emperor acts, the Heaven Emperor will be able to block him. If the Brocade Emperor does not act, we will definitely win. There is no possibility of anything unexpected happening at all. Brother Zhuang, your method has a high chance of success. Still, we have to consider the possibility that the Brocade Emperor might still be able to arrive in time. Zhuang expression was calm as he said slowly, you are right, Brother Lang. Actually, even if the Brocade Emperor is unable to act, the two of us joining forces might not necessarily succeed. I was already intending to ask for assistance in the first place. Lang Qing asked, who do you intend to find? Brother Lang, you should know what that Yan Zhaoge looks like. Zhuang asked instead. Don't you feel that he looks similar to someone else? Lang Qing's gaze hardened as images of Yan Zhaoge that he had seen before swiftly surfaced within his mind before he compared them with the others in his memories. It would have been fine if Zhuang had not mentioned it. Now that he had mentioned it, Lang Qing gradually grew suspicious as well. That grand disciple of Hu Yuexin, Xue Chuqing? Lang Qing frowned. They are related by blood, mother and son? While there are indeed some similarities between their brows, there are also many people who look exactly like them even though they are completely unrelated. At this point, the Western Exalt Lang Qing suddenly halted, his gaze flickering as he seemed to be pondering something. Zhuang said, that's right. If it is just looks, it would be nothing much. Still, I noticed something. You and I both know that Chao Jie protects descendants of the Dim Radiant sect. Still, that scum surnamed Yen, having entered the Dim Radiant Mausoleum, even if he does not have an immortal artifact, he would definitely have obtained Yin Tianxia's legacy. He is not a direct descendant of the Dim Radiant sect. It would be fine if Chao Jie did not fly into a rage, but he actually continued to look after him. This is not normal. Hearing Zhuang words, Lang Qing stroked his beard. Everyone suspects that Hu Yuexin's descendant might have inadvertently obtained the clues left behind by Yin Tianxia that year. That Yan Zhaoge is related to Hu Yuexin's descendant. That Chao Jie views him differently? No. Lang Qing shook his head again, his eyes narrowing into slits. It was not inadvertently obtained. From the looks of it now, Hu Yuexin and Yin Tianxia might have been acquaintances in the first place. That is why the things that Yin Tianxia brought back ended up in Hu Yuexin's hands and are now in the hands of her grand disciple. He opened his eyes. What a great dim, radiant emperor. What a great way of deceiving everyone. His successor is not a descendant of the dim radiant sect at all, instead being a descendant of Hu Yuexin's lineage. Zhuangshen nodded. Chao Jie is more or less an insider. Lang Qing looked at him. In that case, the person you are looking for, to assist you, Taoist, One Heaven of the East, Zhuangshen answered, Lian Zulin of the Northwest. Taoist, One Heaven, the Lord of the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory, the chief of remote Cloud Mountain's clear light locale, the Eastern Exalt, Lian Zulin, the Lord of the Northwestern Dim Heaven Territory, the Lord of the Red Sea, the Northwestern Exalt. Chapter 1016. Yan Zhaoge's mother, Xue Chuqing, was secretly wanted in some places of the world beyond worlds. Or rather, she might not be wanted, but there were many people who wanted to find her. These were mainly the Central June Heaven Territory, the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory, the Northwestern Dim Heaven Territory, and the Western Turtle Heaven Territory. Now that they knew that Yan Zhaoge and Yan Di might be related to Xue Chuqing, they now had an extremely powerful clue in their search for her. Therefore, Zhuangshen had the confidence to invite the Eastern Exalt Taoist One Heaven and the Northwestern Exalt Lian Zulin to assist him. Still, when the name of the Northwestern Exalt was mentioned, Zhuangshen looked at Lang Qing. Generally speaking, besides the Central June Heaven Territory, the other 8 territories of the world beyond worlds were not on good terms with the neighboring territories. The accumulation of disputes, big and small, would eventually lead to a tense relationship, even if it did not turn into a feud. However, some of them could be restrained, while others would gradually erupt. This was not just reflected between the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory and the Southern Blazing Heaven Territory. The Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory and the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory, the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory, and the Northeastern Sky Heaven Territory, and the Northeastern Sky Heaven Territory, and the Northern Profound Heaven Territory were not on good terms. Similarly, there were many conflicts between the Western Turtle Heaven Territory and the Northwestern Dim Heaven Territory. The Western Exalt Lang Qing had a calm expression on his face. At the very least, she and I share the same opinion regarding Hu Yuexin's descendant. This is the reason why I asked her to help me. I believe she won't refuse. Zhuangshen nodded. That's good. He had previously adopted a neutral attitude towards Xue Chuqing's matter. If the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors did not make a clear decision, then he would ignore it. Now, however, having vaguely sensed the relationship between Yan Zhaoge and Xue Chuqing, Zhuangshen's opinion on this matter naturally changed accordingly. While there is no concrete evidence, my deduction should not be wrong. Yan Zhaoge is related to Hu Yuexin's descendant. Zhuangshen asked, since that is so, can Elder Wang step forward? Lang Qing shook his head. He might be able to make things easier for us, but I don't know if he will show up personally. Zhuangshen raised his head slightly, exhaling slowly. When news of the immortal artifact of the dim, radiant mausoleum having fallen into the hands of that Yan Zhaoge back, then spread, since Elder Wang did not make an appearance, it is hard to say now. The Wutong Slope martial practitioners behind him all revealed looks of regret. The Elder Wang that Zhuangshen and Lang Qing mentioned was none other than the Earth Exalt, Wang Zhengcheng, the Lord of the Central June Heaven Territory, one of the peak figures of the entire world beyond world's martial saint realm. More importantly, Wang Zhengqing's decisions were often backed by the will of the earthly sovereign. It doesn't matter. Zhuang Shun's gaze was deep as he slowly said, "Contact, Taoist, One Heaven, and fellow Taoist Lian." Lang Qing said, "We need to appease the others as well. Let's make some appropriate concessions to prevent people from causing trouble behind us when we head to the southeast." Zhuang Shen nodded, saying slowly, "Since that is so, let us wait for the Heaven Emperor to return to the world beyond worlds. When we emerge from seclusion, the Heaven Emperor and the Brocade Emperor are in extra-dimensional space. They might also be able to extricate themselves and return. The Heaven Emperor has long since learned of the deaths of Qing Shuzi and Taoist Leading Mist. While the Brocade Emperor is fast, the Heaven Emperor should not be much slower than him." Zhuang Shen turned to look in the direction of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. "Opening ceremony? It just so happens that there's still some time left. Since that's the case, we'll also go congratulate you on that day." Broad Creed Mountain soon learned of the news that the Southern Exalt had finally returned to the Southern Blazing Heaven territory. This was because the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia had similarly returned to the Southeastern Yang Heaven territory. After learning of all that had happened earlier, the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia too felt this to be unexpected. Still, he quickly made arrangements. With regards to Broad Creed Mountain's opening ceremony, Chao Jia had clearly expressed that he would personally attend the ceremony. With that, Broad Creed Mountain and Golden Court Mountain both understood that the Southeastern Exalt was going to support Yan Zhaoga and Broad Creed Mountain. At the same time, Yan Zhaoga and the others learnt from Chao Jia that the Brocade Emperor Fu Yunqi had already returned from extra-dimensional space, returning to the world beyond worlds. News from Kunlun Mountain's ingenious flying peaks Red Lotus Cliff confirmed this as well. While there was still no news of the Heaven Emperor's return, the Brocade Emperor might have returned before him. Most people heaved a sigh of relief at this. After thanking the guests of Ingenious Flying Peak, Yan Zhaoga continued making preparations neither hurriedly nor slowly. From the looks of it, after experiencing a peak, the conflict between the Immortal Court and Buddhism will gradually calm down afterwards. Yan Zhaoga pondered. Barring any major incidents, the next peak might have to wait another 100 years. A hint of gloominess flashed through Yan Zhaoga's gaze. With the great battle between the Immortal Court and the Blessed Lands having ended, the war had turned into a phase of overall confrontation and local conflicts. With that, the Immortal Court might be able to divert more attention to the world beyond worlds. The after-effects of him obtaining the dim, radiant will might gradually begin to manifest. The Immortal Court might still be far away, but it was still unclear what the bigwigs of the world beyond worlds, who were right before him, would think of this. The myriad dragon palace hovered above Yan Zhaoga's head, its door open as the space within was blurry. Now, a completely transparent silhouette appeared, gradually becoming clearer as it finally manifested as a massive black metal wheel. Of the 12 slots on the wheel, 9 of them were currently flickering with light that was bright or dim, rotating alongside the black metal wheel. While it still looked ordinary, the power contained within was vigorous and tyrannical to the extreme. Because it had yet to be completely refined, it was still not convenient to wield it. Even so, however, the weight of its power was already enough to leave one sighing in amazement. It was precisely the dim radiant wheel. After a long period of refinement, this treasure was already much more perfected than it had been in the past as it unceasingly advanced towards completion. Towards Yan Zhaoga, it had long since ceased to be as indifferent as it had been in the past. While it could not be as nimble as a sacred artifact, Yan Zhaoga had already gradually developed a telepathic connection with it. Yen Zhaoga temporarily halted with the remaining 3 slots. His current cultivation base was still low. While his artifact forging techniques were exquisite, the time was still not ripe for him to completely refine it into an immortal artifact. Still, according to his original plan, it would already be sufficient. Not completely refining it into an immortal artifact, there would not be much of a difference between 9 slots and 11 slots in his plan. Keeping a few high-grade sacred artifacts would be more beneficial in raising the combat power of himself and his sect. Before their opening ceremony, the 10 exalts had all returned from Kunlun Mountain. At the same time, the Brocade Emperor had also been able to free himself from extra-dimensional space. While the Brocade Emperor had returned a little earlier, the Heaven Emperor would not be much later, as he would likely return before their opening ceremony. Yen Zhaoga did not believe that the Southern Exalt would let the matter rest, since he had yet to make a move. Perhaps everyone was waiting for that day to arrive. The Royal Reed Sea was about to welcome an unprecedented event. Chapter 1017. Who knows how many people are probably just waiting to watch this opening ceremony? Yen Zhaoga pondered as he went through his preparations once more. This battle could be considered one of the few times that Yen Zhaoga did not have sufficient confidence in winning. Until the final moment, no one knew how many enemies there would be, who they would be, and how many helpers they would have. The situation was very unclear, with many factors influencing it, and he had too little information on hand. For example, he had met the Northeastern Exalt once due to his mother, and they seemed to have left a good impression on each other. Still, it was completely unknown whether this bigwig would help him. There was not much of a deep relationship between them, and there was no conflict between the Northeastern Exalt and the Southern Exalt. Why would he help him? Moreover, there was also the pressure of the Heaven Emperor. Why would the Northeastern Exalt offend the Heaven Emperor for no good reason at all? On the contrary, if the relationship between him and his mother Xuechuqing was known by others, the Eastern Exalt, Western Exalt, and Northwestern Exalt might come looking for trouble. While this might not be definite, Yen Zhaoga had to consider it. This was something that he could already foresee after having a rough understanding of the situation and making preparations for the worst. Because he had too little information on hand, he might not even be aware of some things, as unexpected accidents might occur at any time. For example, what were the views of the world beyond worlds 3 sovereigns regarding his mother, the dim radiant wheel that he possessed, and the dim radiant emperor that year? What were the attitudes of the other 3 emperors apart from the Brocade Emperor and the Heaven Emperor? What were the attitudes of the other exalts of 10 territories? If he could not understand himself and the enemy, many of his current deductions might be completely wrong. Still, Yen Zhaoga was not panicked or fearful, as he just unceasingly sorted out his thoughts. Doing his best, not leaving any openings or flaws behind, was definitely the foundation of everything. With this as a prerequisite, he would make more contingency plans and plans. If there really were any changes that were completely unexpected, he would have to act according to the situation. Of course, if the Brocade Emperor acted as he had agreed, things would be much simpler. Most important is still myself. Yen Zhaoga raised his head and looked at that dim radiant wheel. Yen Zhaoga had invested quite a bit in this big fella. It was truly a super money-eating machine. Not counting the dim radiant lamp used by the dim radiant Emperor Yin Tianxia as a foundation, Yen Zhaoga had already expended a pile of high-grade sacred artifacts in order to refine it. After the Golden Sun Wheel and the 5 Phoenix Fan, the Dragon Tail Whip, the Blazing Flame Saber, the Heaven Reversing Axe, the Darkhorn Dragon Whip, and the other 2 high-grade sacred artifacts from the Southern Blazing Heaven Territory, the True Slaying Sword, and the Light Dust Formless Armor, were all smelted by the dim radiant wheel. The concepts contained within these sacred artifacts were all extraordinary, but most of them were not needed by the dim radiant wheel. Yan Zhaoge was using them as a medium to transmit the various peak martial arts that he was proficient in. In addition, there was also the golden crow heaven incinerating blade, and the purple sea sword that had been swallowed at the beginning. Of the 10 high-grade sacred artifacts that Yan Zhaoge had brought back from the southern blazing heaven territory, only the bright barbaric Taoist robe and the phoenix cry crown were now left, as well as the original golden sun wheel and the heaven-earth reversing axe. However, there was always a reward for his efforts. What 10 high-grade sacred weapons could not do, this big fellow before him could. Although the refinement was not complete, it was a very important part of his plan, provided that his deductions were not wrong. Yan Zhaoge stroked his lower chin, suddenly smiling. A big stage. I like it. Whether it is a blessing or a curse, let it come quickly. I can't wait any longer. In the days that followed, Yan Zhaoge tempered his body while continuing to perfect his various preparations. During this period of time, unbeknownst to the outside world, Broad Creed Mountain actually had a third immortal bridge martial saint. Yan Zhaoge's Northern Ocean clone had finally succeeded in establishing the orbit of the movement of stars within his internal universe as well, causing his acupoints that had already seen divinity to circulate as he ascended to the immortal bridge stage. This time, it was the Northern Ocean clone who had benefited from his main body's experience in ascending to the immortal bridge stage that had finally succeeded in surpassing that bottleneck. At the same cultivation level, Yan Zhaoge's Northern Ocean clone was inferior to his main body. Still, Yan Zhaoge had an idea regarding this clone, which seemed rather feasible from the looks of it now. Following the powers of the Kuanping, the True Dragon, the Tao Tai, the Pishio, and the Bifang, Yan Zhaoge had merged the power of the Golden Crow within as well. The simultaneous strengthening of various powers and treasures, as well as the usage of unique techniques, had allowed the Northern Ocean clone to improve at a tremendous rate. He was also verifying that his original idea was getting closer and closer to success. As time passed, the date of Broad Creed Mountain's official opening drew nearer and nearer. Just then, a message arrived. Following the Brocade Emperor, the Heaven Emperor had finally returned to the world beyond worlds as well. The Heaven Emperor has returned to the world beyond worlds. Beneath the blue skies, the roving jade heavens, green duckweed mountain, scenery peak, flowing heaven cliff. Within a cave manor, a handsome youth rested sideways on a bed. While he looked relaxed and languid, he possessed a certain air of his own. This person in this cave manor was naturally the owner of this place, the Dragon Spring Emperor of the Jade Clear lineage, who had entered the Prime Clear lineage, Long Xingquan. In front of him stood a white-haired old man. This was the Dragon Spring Emperor's eldest son, the Lord of Green Duckweed Mountain's Minor White Peak, Gao Shiwebwa. He nodded, saying, "Yes, Father. The Heaven Emperor has already returned to the world beyond worlds. He should be the greatest threat to Broad Creed Mountain." The Dragon Spring Emperor smiled. "I wonder if anyone else will make a move." Gao Shiwebwa asked, "Are you returning to the world beyond worlds?" The Dragon Spring Emperor shook his head. That would instead invite calamity upon Broad Creed Mountain. We should leave it to Jinbei to handle. Gao Shiwebwa frowned. If it is that person, his attitude in recent years, I believe that he will not disappoint us. The Dragon Spring Emperor said mildly, "Something major is about to happen in the world beyond worlds this time." World beyond worlds, Central June Heaven Territory. Kunlun Mountain's southern high peak, Qilin Cliff, within the cave manor. An old man looked at the numerous images of light before him, remaining silent for a long time. After a while, he muttered, "It is actually not a coincidence. Such a martial Tao should not be wrong. Still, how was it achieved? Also, the ages do not match." Now, someone entered. "Master, the Southern Exalt is waiting outside." The old man turned, revealing an ancient face that was heavy like the great earth. This was none other than the lord of the central June Heaven territory. The earth exalt Wang Zhengcheng. He pondered slightly before retrieving a jade box. Hand this to Southern Zhuang. The disciple received the order, received the jade box, and bowed before withdrawing. The door soundlessly closed behind him. Wang Zhengcheng gazed at the changing images of light before him, remaining silent. Outside the cave manor, the southern exalt Zhuangshen, who looked like a white-haired youth, sat on a stone bench beneath a pine tree, calmly looking at the chessboard before him as he did not move or speak. Seeing someone come out, Zhuangshen gazed over, who delivered the jade box to him. Zhuangshen received the jade box and opened it, a brilliant light erupting from his eyes. "Thank you, Elder Wang." Zhuangshen closed the jade box, standing up and cupping his hands towards the cave manor. Then he turned and transformed into a fiery phoenix, soaring into the air and instantly leaving. Chapter 1018. The day of Broad Creed Mountain's disciple recruitment ceremony was about to begin. After the news had spread, youngsters of various lands who were looking forward to joining Broad Creed Mountain all hurried over. The reason they had spread the news so early was to give these people time to get there. After all, it was a long journey. For martial practitioners, and even mortals with comparatively lower cultivation bases, they might not be able to reach the foot of Broad Creed Mountain their entire lives if they did not have any special means of transportation. Just the Royal Reed Sea alone, from south to north, from east to west, spanned more than 1,000,000 kilometers, let alone the heavens and earth outside of the Royal Reed Sea. In order to receive these people who wished to join them and also to expand their influence, Broad Creed Mountain had dispatched many people to various locations. Only those who had passed the initial selection process would be brought back to the Royal Reed Sea and Broad Creed Mountain to participate in this ceremony. Currently, Broad Creed Mountain still had relatively few members in the world beyond worlds. Still, the already famous Broad Creed Mountain had attracted many young geniuses of their own accord to join them, saving them a great deal of effort. In the Royal Reed Sea, while Broad Creed Mountain had not been high profile these past years, it had already soundlessly, gradually permeated the entire Royal Reed Sea. It was like back in the Eight Extremities world. Broad Creed Mountain had possessed the land of the Heaven Domain, but had many smaller sects subordinate to it, forming a massive network. Currently, in the Royal Reed Sea, this network was also beginning to take shape. Relying on this network, Broad Creed Mountain's recruitment of talents and recruitment of disciples this time was greatly facilitated. Are you feeling bored, not going out to receive guests? There were not many young martial practitioners of Broad Creed Mountain who were still here. Most of them had been sent out, with only a few remaining on the mountain. Yen Zhaoga naturally did not need to be sent out. Not only could he not be sent out, he had to remain on the mountain. Some of the guests invited to the ceremony this time had come to Broad Creed Mountain and needed him to receive them. Beside Yen Zhaoga stood two youngsters who shook their heads upon hearing his words. No, one of them was tall and sturdy. His facial features looked rather handsome. It was just that he wore a black Yin Zhao mask over his right eye. It was none other than the orphan of the Listening Thunder Peaks Xia family, Xia Guang, who had accompanied Yen Zhaoga back from the southern Blazing Heaven territory. At this moment, Xia Guang appeared to be less than 20 years of age. At that time, he'd overutilized his Blood Thunderbolt ritual in a fierce battle with an elder of 3-foot mountain, causing his lifespan to be greatly reduced, causing him to look as if he was over 50 and about to enter old age from the prime of his life. That was not because Xia Guang had intentionally changed his appearance. Instead, it was because his lifespan had been greatly damaged. According to his lifespan, he was indeed about to step into old age. But now, he seemed to have returned to his youth. This was not because he had intentionally changed his appearance. Instead, after entering Broad Creed Mountain, he had been able to cultivate in one of the 10 primordial heavenly scriptures, the life creation heavenly scripture, thus greatly increasing his longevity. Compared to his long lifespan, his current age couldn't even be considered a young man. He could only be considered a teenager. Xia Guang's current attire had also changed from his original red clothes to the standard attire of a core, direct disciple of Broad Creed Mountain. Like Yan Zhaoge, he wore a white robe and a blue robe with a black border. If possible, he naturally hoped to be a receptionist and welcome guests. More than 6 years had passed since the massacre of the Xia family at Listening Thunder Peak. There should be 2 other survivors aside from Xia Guang. Yet, after so many years had passed, Xia Guang had still not been able to find his kin. As time passed, Xia Guang felt increasingly uneasy, his hopes diminishing. It was just that he was unwilling to give up. After Yan Zhaoge had shocked the world by rampaging through the south previously, Broad Creed Mountain's momentum had been extraordinary this time's opening ceremony, causing the clouds all around to move. If his kin were still alive, they would likely have rushed over after receiving the news. Still, Xia Guang was not suited to be a receptionist. First, not mentioning his violent temper and quick temper, he had seldom interacted with the outside world when he had lived in seclusion in the Xia family. While he had often ventured outside to temper himself after having entered Broad Creed Mountain, he had still not been very mature in how he dealt with people. This had to do with his experiences and also his personality. In recent years, the Blood Thunderbolt, Xia Guang, had been a rather resounding name of Broad Creed Mountain's younger generation. Still, there were both good and bad aspects to this name. While Xia Guang had established Broad Creed Mountain's might with his outstanding strength, he had also stirred up some trouble, big or small, from time to time. While many things were not necessarily his fault, if someone more experienced in human relations were to handle them, the results would be much better. Of course, in comparison, Yan Zhaoge was much better at stirring up trouble than him. While Xia Guang did not want to remain on the mountain, he had always unconditionally obeyed whatever Yan Zhaoge and Yan Di said. It was just that ever since people had come to join the mountain, he had often been secretly keeping watch at the entrance of the mountain, seeing if any of his kin had arrived. Standing beside Yan Zhaoge alongside Xia Guang was a young girl who also appeared to be less than 20 years of age. She was beautiful and transcendent, just that a cold intent emanated from her entire body. It was Qing. She had already transcended mortality and entered sainthood several years ago. Not counting Xia Guang, who had come to join him, she was the 4th martial saint of Broad Creed Mountain's 3rd generation disciples after Yan Zhaoge, Su Fei, and Feng Yunsheng. In recent years of cultivation, she had already attained the 2nd level of the martial saint realm, even beginning to attempt a breakthrough into the 3rd level of the martial saint realm. Still, ever since having come to the world beyond worlds as compared to Su Fei, Xia Guang, and even Yinglong Tu and Shi Jun, Qing had been much more low-key. Most of the time, she would be cultivating in seclusion within the mountain. At this point, Qing was also aware of many things as she understood that the situation was unique. Therefore, she did not object to the arrangements made by Yan Zhaoge, Fu Enshu, and the others. She was not a restless person, as she was more willing to immerse herself in the ocean of martial arts and explore its profundities. When she had ventured out to temper herself in the past, it had been more for the sake of tempering herself rather than out of interest. Not being a receptionist, remaining on the mountain would have more time to cultivate. Qing would naturally not feel bored. If I am not wrong, junior apprentice Sister Qing, after this opening ceremony, there will be a preliminary confirmation of your matter, Yan Zhaoge said. It is just that it is still uncertain whether the outcome will be good or bad at that time. You still need to be prepared for it, as compared to whether it would be safe or not. The outcome here more referred to whether Si Kongqing still had to remain low-key and bide her time like she was now. Si Kongqing said calmly, "It is fine. I understand." Now, some other broad Creed Mountain disciples approached, unable to conceal the reverence in their gazes as they looked at Yan Zhaoga. Yan Zhaoga turned, smiling. "What is it?" That disciple hurriedly answered, "Senior apprentice uncle, Yan, a guest has arrived. Chief invites you to go receive him." "Oh," Yan Zhaoga asked, "you know who it is?" The other party answered, "He calls himself the Earthly Young Master, surnamed Chun and named Kuanhua." Chapter 10:19. Chun Kuanhua. Hearing his words, a playful expression appeared on Yan Zhaoga's face. Yan Zhaoga had naturally heard of the Earthly Young Master Chun Kuanhua before. However, compared to him, Yan Zhaoga had heard more about his elder brother, the Upper Exalt, Chun Qianhua, the publicly acknowledged strongest martial saint of the world beyond worlds, the #1 Exalt. His twin brother was Chun Kuanhua, who had the name Earthly Prince. He was also a top expert with extraordinary talent who had made a name for himself at a young age. While he was not as shockingly talented as Chun Qianhua, his name could still shake the world beyond worlds. It was worth mentioning that there were rumors that Chun Kuanhua had been pursuing ingenious Flying Peak's Fu Ting, but there was no news of it. Yan Zhaoga paid some attention to this matter. While it had been the former Heavenly Young Master, the current Upper Exalt Chun Qianhua, who had helped 3 Foot Mountain back then, it had been Chun Kuanhua, who had been closer to 3 Foot Mountain afterwards, as 3 Foot Mountain had been at his beck and call, contributing much to him. Compared to first Young Master Chun, this second Young Master Chun had a closer relationship with 3 Foot Mountain. 3 Foot Mountain's 2 supreme treasures, the Soul Flag and the high-grade sacred artifact, the Golden Crow incinerating Heaven Saber, had both fallen into Yan Zhaoga's hands. After inspecting it, Yan Zhaoga discovered that there was a special sigil on it, which did not seem to be the handiwork of 3 Foot Mountain. After falling into his hands, these seals slowly faded away. Analyzing the use of these runes, Yan Zhaoga could tell that they did not possess any killing power, being more of a type of marking and guidance. Once the Soul Flags and the Golden Crow incinerating Heaven Saber were controlled by someone other than 3 Foot Mountain, 3 Foot Mountain, and the people behind it would sense it. It seemed that the other party already knew that the item had fallen into his hands. Honestly speaking, Yan Zhaoga did not care much about Chun Kuanhua, while Chun Kuanhua was actually a cultivation level higher than him, as he was a mid-immortal bridge martial saint, Chun Kuanhua's cultivation base. This was not arrogance. As compared to the Earthly Young Master Chun Kuanhua, there was someone more worthy of Yan Zhaoga's attention. This person was naturally the former Heavenly Young Master, the current Upper Exalt, Chun Qianhua. If there were any variables sufficient to influence the overall situation in the upcoming Broad Creed Mountains opening ceremony, this Upper Exalt would definitely be one of the top few. Yan Zhaoga did not fear powerful enemies, but he hated the element of uncertainty. Coincidentally, according to the many rumors circulating in the world beyond worlds, Chun Qianhua, the #1 expert beneath the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, just happened to be the person who was the most unpredictable, or rather, the most unstable factor. For example, the 3 sovereigns, 5 emperors, and other supreme beings, it was difficult for others to guess their thoughts because they were shrewd, not easily revealing their emotions. But at the very least, according to their past experiences, there were clues to follow, and they could be summarized into a pattern. Even if it was a disguise, at least there were clues. There was only the Upper Exalt Chun Qianhua, who was temperamental and often acted unexpectedly with many contradictions and abnormalities. Even the few emperors couldn't grasp his thoughts. Still, no matter how one put it, He was the most outstanding martial genius of the world beyond worlds in recent years. The other bigwigs all treated this peerlessly talented junior with a lot of preferential treatment, while Chun Kuanhua's title of Earthly Young Master corresponded to his brother's title of Heavenly Young Master. That year, if not for the tacit approval of the earthly sovereign and earthly exalt of Kunlun Mountain's southern high peaks Chilan Cliff, this title of Earthly Young Master would probably not have spread throughout the entire world beyond worlds and become publicly acknowledged. It was hard to say how much of this was due to Chun Kuanhua's own talent and how much was due to his elder brother's reputation. What Yan Zhaoge was interested in now was whether or not Chun Qianhua would come now that Chun Kuanhua had come. Amidst his thoughts, Yan Zhaoge arrived at Earth Peak. Apart from Chun Kuanhua, many guests had already arrived at Broad Creed Mountain as well. For example, martial practitioners of the Brocade Emperor's lineage at ingenious Flying Peak's Red Lotus Cliff had already arrived. They had not come late just because they were of the Brocade Emperor's lineage, instead arriving rather early. Of course, it was not Fu Ting. Yan Zhaoge, who was well aware of the reason, was not surprised. Meanwhile, Pavilion Lord Gu Hong of the North Sea Sword Pavilion and Chief Zhou Haoxing of the Dim Darkness Sect had already arrived as well. As compared to their previous united resistance against the Grand Xian dynasty, the other powers of the Royal Reed Sea had already tacitly acknowledged Broad Creed Mountain's position as the hegemon of the Royal Reed Sea. Broad Creed Mountain's recruitment of disciples within the boundaries of the Royal Reed Sea this time had also received the tacit approval, even assistance, of the North Sea Sword Pavilion and the others. This was the authority of a hegemon, having the greatest priority in selecting the most outstanding local geniuses. The local geniuses would naturally wish to join the strongest power. Still, due to the great geographical distance and other factors, it would be very easy for them to be overlooked. Meanwhile, Broad Creed Mountain had been able to select materials from the territories of the North Sea Sword Pavilion, the Dim Darkness Sect, and the other powers this time. The possibility of an undiscovered gem appearing in the vast ocean was indisputably very small. Of course, Broad Creed Mountain rarely went to the extreme. It was only during such a large-scale opening ceremony that they would recruit such talents on such a large scale. Still, such ceremonies would naturally not be held frequently. Yan Zhaoge saw that earthly young master in a side hall of the Great Hall. He could be said to be handsome, his attitude amiable, as one felt as if they were bathed in a spring breeze. It was rumored that as compared to the elusive first young Master Chen, this second young Master Chen was rather well acquainted with many people in the world beyond worlds. Please forgive me for coming uninvited. Chun Kuanhua was also observing Yan Zhaoge. After appraising him for a moment, he cupped his hands, smiling. Yan Zhaoge returned the greeting. Our clan naturally welcomes you having come from afar. Please do not blame me for any lack of etiquette. Playing with the fan in his hand, Chun Kuanhua smiled. It is me who has been presumptuous. I am someone who likes to make friends and join in on the fun. Your clan's opening ceremony is a rare event in recent years. My heart itched. I came here rashly. I have let young chief Yen see a joke. Make friends? Join in on the fun? Yan Zhaoge glanced at Chun Kuanhua. The meaning behind his words was rather thought-provoking. Make friends with whom? Join in on the fun? It seemed like it could be understood from any angle. Second young Master Chen speaks too seriously. This Yin does not dare to accept the title of young chief. While my father is the current chief, the position of our clan's chief is not hereditary. The various seniors have yet to decide on the next chief. Yan Zhaoge said, nonchalantly, I am used to being lazy. I fear that I would not be able to take on such a great responsibility. Hearing his words, Chen Kuanhua smiled. I was rude. Please do not take it to heart, young Master Yen. It is just that after seeing your esteemed father, you are clearly the most outstanding amongst your peers of the same generation. Therefore, I was moved. I hope that you will not take it to heart. Why would I? Earthly young master is too polite. Yen Zhaoge smiled as well. Their first meeting could still be considered pleasant on the surface. Still, neither of them mentioned the matter of 3-Foot Mountain. From this alone, Yen Zhaoge knew that the other party might not have come just to observe the ceremony. Still, if they had come with ill intentions, would the upper exalt Qin Qianhua have come? This was the crux of the matter. Chapter 10:20. There were many rumors regarding the upper exalt Qin Qianhua. Having never personally seen him in action, Yen Zhaoge was unable to accurately judge his strength. Still, in the battle between the Brocade Emperor and Mars Halberd that year, Yen Zhaoge had personally witnessed the tip of the iceberg of the earth exalt Wang Zhengqing's strength. Yen Zhaoge had also seen the little sword god who had assumed the name of Qian Xueji and was active in the world beyond worlds, while his real name was Long Xueji. Through comparison with these two, Yen Zhaoge was able to estimate the general level of Qin Qianhua, who was equally renowned as Long Xueji and surpassed Wang Zhengqing. Putting aside little sword god Long Xueji for now, the earth exalt Wang Zhengqing was a person of legend who could virtually suppress the conflict between martial saints of the world beyond worlds all on his own, even if the target was another supreme being. The reason why he said almost was mainly because he wanted to exclude the upper exalt Qin Qianhua, who was superior to him. Perhaps it could be said that the upper exalt Qin Qianhua was an existence who could suppress the world beyond worlds even if the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors did not appear. He might be one of the few experts in history who could fight against some true immortal emperors with his human body. Of course, resisting and being suppressed were 2 different things. Being able to fight against a true immortal and being able to escape from a true immortal were 2 different standards. Without having personally interacted with the upper exalt who stood at the peak of the world beyond worlds martial saint realm, Yen Zhaoge was unable to judge how far he could go. But among the many uncertainties, this was undoubtedly the one that attracted the most attention, especially earthly young master Chen Kuanhua, who came uninvited. It was even more difficult to fathom his intentions. Was he bluffing, or was he a step ahead of his brother? Chen Kuanhua was probably the only one who knew. However, one would not slap a smiling person. With the other party being polite and not displaying any enmity, Broad Creed Mountain naturally wouldn't reject them at their gates, letting others see them as a joke for no reason. Yen Zhaoge also didn't hesitate as he invited Chen Kuanhua to stay in a guest house on the mountain, with other Broad Creed Mountain disciples taking care of things. As the date of the grand ceremony drew nearer, the Broad Creed Mountain martial practitioners who had gone out in search of good talents also began gradually returning to the mountain. Most of them headed to places outside of the Royal Reed Sea. This kind of action was actually a bit of a taboo, and it could easily cause the local powerful forces to unite and resist. Still, Yen Zhaoge had rampaged through the south in the past, slaying Zhang Shuren, Peng He, Qing Shizi, and the other peak martial saint experts, forming an immense deterrent effect. As the ruler of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory, Golden Court Mountain did not raise any objections. Due to the special circumstances of this time's opening ceremony, it would be very difficult for it to happen again in the future. The local bullies of the Setting Sun Archipelago, the Jade Sun Mountain Range, the Green Peak High Plains, the consecutive Drum Mountain Range, and the other regions of the southeast that Broad Creed Mountain had trampled on this time could only pinch their noses and accept it. In the southern Blazing Heaven territory, Circumference Mountain, and the other places where the Dynasty River flowed were more convenient. Here, Yen Zhaoge and Broad Creed Mountain's prestige was even greater. While Yen Zhaoge had not set foot in the southern Blazing Heaven territory since the battle at Circumference Mountain that year, his legends still existed there even now. In places like Circumference Mountain, Yen Zhaoge and Broad Creed Mountain were akin to uncrowned kings. It had been like this all these years. Only when the southern exalt Zhuangshun had returned to the southern Blazing Heaven territory this year had this situation eased somewhat. Still, because the southern exalt had not immediately acted up, Yen Zhaoge still maintained a certain level of authority over the region of the Dynasty River. Broad Creed Mountain's martial practitioners had brought back many good seedlings from there as a result. Young master, there are indeed some good seedlings this time. Currently, Broad Creed Mountain still appeared rather lacking in manpower in the world beyond worlds. Therefore, Ahu had previously been dispatched outside as well, having just returned not long ago. Xiao AI was also in a similar situation. Still, after having returned, Xiao AI first focused on something else. Young master, this maid saw that earthly young master just now. While he is inferior to young master, he is still an extraordinarily handsome man. Xiao AI clenched her fists, her eyes shining as she said excitedly to Yen Zhaoge, "If he is still unmarried, he can get an evaluation below." Yen Zhaoge rolled his eyes. "Xiao AI, you make me worry very easily like this. An enemy could easily take you down with just a beauty trap." "How could that be?" Xiao AI waved her hands. "Only young master and young master are above A. However outstanding the others are, they can only get an A at most." Hearing her words, Yen Zhaoge did not know whether to laugh or to cry. "Should I feel gratified now that you say this?" Yen Zhaoge put a hand on his head. While the girl before him remained infatuated, she had finally agreed not long ago to make a special exception for Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di in her evaluation. Only their evaluation did not depend on whether they were unmarried or not. Xiao AI sat there, her cheeks resting on her hands. "I heard that his elder brother, the upper exalt, is even more extraordinarily handsome. I wonder how he compares to the Brocade Emperor." Yen Zhaoge rolled his eyes. The Brocade Emperor Fu Yunqi could be said to be the man with the most outstanding appearance. Still, as Xiao AI had said, while the lofty Brocade Emperor caused her to drool over him, he was only given an A rating. Of course, because this grade was too outstanding and incomparable, this girl made an exception for the second time, specifically adding an above A grade for the Brocade Emperor alone. Yen Zhaoge and the others nearly spat out mouthfuls of rice. "Today is the day of the opening ceremony. Young master." Ahu looked at Yen Zhaoge. "How do I put it? It is abnormally calm." Yen Zhaoge said, "It is the calm before the storm. Since the Heaven Emperor has already returned, if something happens, it will be today. Since it is not early, it will definitely not be late." Amidst their conversation, other disciples of Broad Creed Mountain came to report that the most important guest thus far had arrived. The Lord of the Southeastern Yang Heaven Territory, the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jie, had finally arrived. Yen Zhaoge went to receive him. There was no need for words, as they had already come to a tacit understanding. "I have something to ask the Southeastern Exalt about." While something major was bound to happen today, Yen Zhaoge was calm and composed as he sent a sound transmission to Chao Jie. "This might be a little presumptuous. It concerns my mother." Chao Jie knit his brows, looking at Yen Zhaoge. "To tell you the truth, I have already learnt of some things after making a trip to the territories of the Immortal Court. I guess that my mother's matter is related to the Immortal Court." Yen Zhaoge said, "Am I right?" Chao Jie's brows eased slightly before he knit them again very quickly. He was silent for a moment before he did not immediately answer, instead saying, "Do not leak this matter." Yen Zhaoge generally understood what Chao Jie was thinking. He did not mention that his situation was different from Fu Ting's as he nodded, answering, "Rest easy, I understand." At this point, a sword light suddenly flew over from the west, descending towards Broad Creed Mountain. Broad Creed Mountain was familiar with the newcomer. It was precisely the southeastern Swords Mistress. Not obstructing her, the Swords Mistress rapidly landed on Broad Creed Mountain, coming before Yan Zhaoge and Chao Jia. Looking at Yan Zhaoge, she did not communicate with Chao Jia via sound transmission, as she instead said directly, "Something has happened. The volume of the Dynasty River is decreasing rapidly. If this continues, it will definitely be cut off by today." Chapter 10:21. The Dynasty River was a renowned water vein of the world beyond worlds. It originated from the central June Heaven Territory's screen Moat Snow Mountain, and it headed southeast, passing through the central June Heaven Territory and southern Blazing Heaven Territory. In the Battle of Circumference Mountain that year, Yan Zhaoge had shocked the world. It was precisely this river vein that he had established the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation, trapping and slaying 3 late immortal bridge martial saints. After that battle, even though Yan Zhaoge had returned to the southeast, no longer having set foot in the southern Blazing Heaven Territory, still, the martial practitioners of Phoenix Ritual Mountain's Wudong Slope had not dared to take a single step into Circumference Mountain for many years before the Southern Exalt had returned. It was not just Circumference Mountain. Wherever the Dynasty River flowed within the southern Blazing Heaven Territory, the martial practitioners of Wudong Slope had all evacuated. The entire eastern region of the southern Blazing Heaven Territory had virtually become Yan Zhaoge's tacit territory. Without the Yellow River of Nine Bends Formation, the Dynasty River itself was a natural moat for many people. The surface of the river was vast as the sea, the momentum of its waters shocking, such that even immortal bridge martial saints would find it hard to stand firm within. Even an exalted martial saint with a human immortal body would find it difficult to stop it. But today, someone had done it. A martial saint, right after the Dynasty River, left the screen moat Snowy Mountain. The river channel had just widened, the flow of the water had slowed down slightly, and it wasn't as rapid as its source. Between the heavens and the earth, a fire phoenix was currently flapping its wings. The entire sky was illuminated into a fiery red. The fire phoenix was like a transparent light and shadow. In the center of the light and shadow, there was a figure shrouded in rainbow light. A handsome man with snowy white hair and brows was none other than the Southern Exalt, Zhuangshen. He looked down at the rushing river below. Wudong Slope's 2 great elders, Zhang Shuren and Peng He, as well as the most outstanding successor of the younger generation, Yuan Xianqing, had perished because of this water vein. Zhuangshen raised his head and looked in the direction of the river. His gaze seemed to pierce through space and time, landing on Circumference Mountain. Without saying a word, he took out a jade box and opened it. Inside the jade box was a patch of yellow soil. As Zhuangshen moved, it fell towards the river below. The soil did not disperse upon contact with water. Instead, it grew on its own and expanded continuously, looking like a yellow cloud. There was more and more soil, and as the volume spread, it didn't become thinner. Instead, it remained tough and dense, unassailable. In the end, the yellow soil directly filled up the entire Dynasty River, as if reclaiming the sea to create land. It forcefully blocked the wide and boundless Dynasty River. The water of the Dynasty River was extremely violent and rapid, and this place was close to the source of the screen moat Snowy Mountain, so the water was even more abundant. The river of the Chao Dynasty, which had its way blocked, suddenly swelled up. As it rushed forward, it spread to the banks on both sides, forming a dam that was about to burst. But the hazy yellow soil didn't retreat, but advanced instead, and it actually forcefully resisted the Dynasty River as it surged towards the source of the screen, Moat Snowy Mountain. Along the way, the rising river water was also blocked by the yellow soil that spread out like smoke. No matter how much water flowed out, the soil would grow even more, following the movement, not allowing the water to be exposed at all. In the end, they actually blocked all the way to the source of Dynasty River on screen Moat Snowy Mountain. A great river that flowed through the world beyond worlds was forcibly obstructed at its source. At this moment, the entire screen Moat Snowy Mountain and the continuous mountain range were trembling slightly, and it seemed like the earth was quaking, but the soil firmly sealed the mouth of the river. Within the sky, the southern exalt Zhuangshun, who was enveloped by the silhouette of a fiery phoenix, slowly exhaled as he saw this. They had limited time. If things dragged on for too long, while the soil would be able to block the mouth of the river, the spiritual qi circulation of the earth veins around the central June heaven territory screen, Moat Snowy Mountain, would definitely be thrown into complete chaos. At that time, it would bring a calamity to the central June heaven territory. The Earth Exalt, who had handed the jade box over to Zhuangshun, would definitely not be happy to see such a thing. Success or failure will be decided today. Zhuangshun kept the empty jade box, no longer looking at the shaking screen Moat Snowy Mountain as he turned and flew towards the southeast. Before long, he saw a person standing in midair, waiting for him. The Western Exalt, Lang Qing. Seeing Zhuangshun, Lang Qing said, "Everyone else has already set off. We are the only ones left." With the breath soil successfully blocking the Dynasty River, the water vein of the Dynasty River in the southern Blazing Heaven territory will soon dry up, Zhuangshun said, that Yen family scum will no longer be able to establish that 9 bends Yellow River formation. The soil within the jade box was a divine soil known as the breath soil. It could grow on its own, never decreasing in consumption. In pre-Great Calamity times, there had been a treasure known as the 9 Heavens breath soil, also known as the earlier Heaven breath soil. Its defensive power was shocking as it could withstand the attacks of various treasures and supreme martial arts, possessing countless miraculous uses and variations. Following the Great Calamity, this treasure had been lost, with only the later Heaven breath soil existing in this world. While it did not possess those miraculous variations and uses, it was the bane of all water beneath the heavens. After having cut off the Dynasty River with this breath soil, Zhuangshun headed south alongside the Western Exalt Lang Qing. Their target was the southeastern Yang Heaven territory, the Royal Reed Sea. As time passed, the southeastern Swords Mistress, who had originally been patrolling the area where the southeastern Yang Heaven territory and the southern Blazing Heaven territory intersected, quickly realized that something was wrong with the situation in the Dynasty River. The surging river first slowed unceasingly before its water level dropped unceasingly. As time went by, there was actually the possibility of its flow being cut off. The southeastern Swords Mistress immediately felt that this was not natural, instead being man-made. At this time, at this place, in this situation, the other party's target was unquestionably Yen Zhaoga and Broad Creed Mountain. At the same time, this also included the southeastern Exalt Chao Jia, who was assisting Broad Creed Mountain, and those of Golden Court Mountain. Decisively, the southeastern Swords Mistress hurried over to Broad Creed Mountain in the Royal Reed Sea. After being reminded of this by the southeastern Swords Mistress, Yen Zhaoga and Chao Jia exchanged glances before Chao Jia said, "It should be the work of Southern Zhuang and the others." "It is fine." Yen Zhaoga shook his head. "We have only lost a path of retreat. Since our sect is holding its opening ceremony in the Royal Reed Sea, this would be the main battlefield should something happen." Because of this, Broad Creed Mountain had even already urged many small and mid-sized sects of the Royal Reed Sea to temporarily retreat along with the commoners of the mundane world, lest they be caught in the crossfire. It looks like there will indeed be unwelcome guests coming today. Yen Zhaoga's expression was calm. After receiving the news, Broad Creed Mountain regained its calm after a brief uproar. Everything was still progressing in an orderly manner. As time passed, the seats were filled with guests as the auspicious hour approached. Broad Creed Mountain's official opening ceremony in the world beyond worlds was about to begin. It was just that as time passed, a more serious problem than the Dynasty River's flow being cut off appeared. One of the world beyond worlds' 5 emperors, the Brocade Emperor, who had previously agreed to come to Broad Creed Mountain in the Royal Reed Sea to observe the ceremony, still had yet to appear. At this moment, anxiety truly arose within the hearts of many Broad Creed Mountain martial practitioners. Even the Golden Court mountain martial practitioners grew uneasy. Looking at the representative of Ingenious Flying Peak, Yen Zhaoga saw that he too was puzzled, embarrassed, and anxious. As his father, Yen Di, gazed over, father and son exchanged gazes, both their expressions rather strange. It was just like when they had gone to the minor no-hatred Tao arena back then. It seemed like they had been stood up by that bigwig again. Chapter 1022. Back at the minor no-hatred Tao arena, Yen Zhaoga and Yen Di had originally been invited by the Brocade Emperor as guests. The result had been very awkward. Their host had disappeared. Also, they had not been seen for a long time, causing Fu Ting and the others of Ingenious Flying Peak to feel very troubled. In the end, the Brocade Emperor had not returned, as Mars Halberd had instead arrived. Only then had Yen Zhaoga and Fu Ting mistakenly entered the immortal court, and Yen Di obtained the Grand Simplicity Splendor Cloud. Fu Ting had always felt apologetic over this matter. Still, the Brocade Emperor had never explained why he had missed his appointment back then. The matter could only be left unsettled. Never would she have thought that a similar situation would actually occur this time. The Brocade Emperor was carefree and casual, not bothering about trifles. Still, he had always placed great importance on keeping his promises. It had already been abnormal for him to miss his appointment the last time. Now that he had done it again, it was even more unsettling. He did not seem to have any motive to specifically target Yen Zhaoga and Broad Creed Mountain. With his status and identity, he could just say so directly if he did not want to come. There was no need for him to lie and then miss his appointment. Still, things seemed very wrong this way. Yen Zhaoga could smell the scent of a scheme from this. Mars Halberd challenged again, suddenly appearing to obstruct the Brocade Emperor. Yen Zhaoga pondered. Or is it the same thing that happened at the minor no-hatred Tao arena back then, with him being obstructed again? Whatever it was for it to happen at this critical juncture, there was definitely someone behind it. Yen Zhaoga pondered for a moment before smiling. While the Brocade Emperor has not arrived, we can still begin the ceremony on time. Perhaps the Brocade Emperor will only arrive a little later, just like when he had challenged Mars Halberd back then. The Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia did not object. The Brocade Emperor will not mind. Yen Di nodded, communicating with the representative of Ingenious Flying Peak, who had arrived. The other party felt rather uneasy and awkward too, as he did not object to Broad Creed Mountain's idea. Amongst the guests, the earthly young master Chen Kunhua sat there, drinking by himself as his gaze swept slightly across those of Broad Creed Mountain and Ingenious Flying Peak. Finally, his gaze stopped on those of Ingenious Flying Peak. The Brocade Emperor missed his appointment. Chen Kunhua stroked his cup, his eyes lighting up slightly. This is interesting. Feeling his gaze, Yen Zhaoga looked over. Retracting his gaze, Chen Kunhua smiled amicably at Yen Zhaoga, raising his cup in greeting. Yen Zhaoge raised his brows slightly, gazing at him for a while before finally smiling, not saying anything as he turned his head away. Oh! Chen Kuanhua's smile faded a little when he saw this. His gaze flickered slightly as he stared at Yen Zhaoge's back, seemingly wanting to do something. Still, after hesitating for a moment, he finally gave up. Chen Kuanhua's body relaxed completely. He refilled his glass and drank happily. The southeastern exalt Chao Jia and the southeastern sword's mistress naturally had seats of honor. At this moment, they could only calm down and silently observe the situation. Golden Court Mountain and Broad Creed Mountain were now bound together for good or ill. The invading enemies had come for Broad Creed Mountain as well as Golden Court Mountain. Yen Zhaoge stood behind Yen Di, facing him on the main seat where Yuan Zhengfeng, Fang Zhuan, and the other higher echelon experts of Broad Creed Mountain sat quietly. The time for the grand ceremony to officially begin finally arrived. Yen Di stood there calmly, his gaze sweeping across the entire area. He did not speak, and his gaze was not sharp. However, the great hall of heaven, rising peak, instantly fell silent at this moment. Everyone knew that everything was about to officially begin. Ying Longtu had a serious expression on his face as he was fully focused on wielding the bell hammer, striking it onto the golden bell beside him now. The heavy sound of the bell resounded far into the distance, reverberating 9 times in a row as it was deafening. The entire Broad Creed Mountain was currently filled with a solemn and dignified atmosphere. At the foot of the mountain, at the Earth Peak, a group of youths who wished to enter Broad Creed Mountain were waiting there. There had originally been some noise, but as the bell rang out, everyone immediately ceased speaking, their expressions solemn. As the bell rang out one after another, the people at the foot of the mountain grew increasingly solemn. Our clan has opened its doors and recruited talented people. My Broad Creed Mountain is greatly honored by your presence. Yen Di's voice reverberated between the heavens and the earth. As the current chief of Broad Creed Mountain, this Yen first thanks you all here. Everyone in the great hall was currently looking quietly at Yen Di, who was speaking. Fairly speaking, in the current Broad Creed Mountain, in terms of fame, the person with the most prestige was Yen Zhaoge, a third-generation disciple. His battle accomplishments at Vast Spirit Mountain and Circumference Mountain had been too glorious as the name of the fallen deity had spread throughout the entire world beyond worlds. Still, looking at Yen Di now, no one dared to underestimate him. It was precisely because Yen Zhaoge's previous battle accomplishments had been too glorious that everyone had begun collecting as much information as they could about his past experiences, specially researching them. During this process, the great battle that had decided Broad Creed Mountain's position as the hegemon of the Royal Reed Sea had also entered the sights of more and more people being broken down and analyzed bit by bit. Therefore, it was not just Yen Zhaoge. Yen Di had drawn the attention of the entire world beyond worlds as well, opening the path to the heavens with a saber and domineeringly ascending to the world beyond worlds. He had slain King Xuanmu of the late Seeing Divinity stage as soon as he had arrived. In the Battle of Broad Creed Mountain afterwards, he had battled a group of immortal bridge martial saints as a Seeing Divinity martial saint, while it had been a chaotic battle. In terms of the final head count, besides Shun Lingzi and Kong Ping, everyone else on the immortal bridge had perished beneath his saber. Guan Lide of the 9th level of the martial saint realm, King Xuanqing of the 8th level of the martial saint realm, Daoist Shi, He Dongcheng, and Gu Zhang of the 7th level of the martial saint realm. Casting aside their prejudices and underestimation of the past, no longer blindly guessing and finding excuses, when the martial practitioners outside of the southeastern Yangheaven territory had earnestly inquired about the true situation of that battle down below Broad Creed Mountain, Their shock was no less than when they had first heard of Yen Zhaoge's battle at Vast Spirit Mountain. From the time he had ascended to the world beyond worlds till now, around 13 years had passed. From the early seeing divinity stage, Yen Di had broken through all the way to the mid-immortal bridge stage. Such a speed caused the entire world beyond worlds to sigh in admiration. Not only did he possess outstanding strength, his talent was shocking as well. Looking at Yen Di, who was currently presiding over the ceremony, and Yen Zhaoge beside him, everyone felt complex emotions. Such outstanding geniuses had offended the Southern Exalt and the Heaven Emperor. Today's opening ceremony was likely to decide their fates. Currently, it was filled with guests, and Broad Creed Mountain had opened its doors. Yen Zhaoge, Yen Di, and the others seemed to be welcoming the most glorious moment of their life force to date. Yet, this might also be the most dangerous moment of their lifetimes. The presiding over the ceremony, Yen Di, was just about to speak when his gaze suddenly focused slightly as his gaze seemed to penetrate through the building, gazing outwards. Yen Zhaoge and the Southeastern Exalt Chao, Jia, both did the same. Powerful auras were currently rapidly approaching from the northeast of the Royal Reed Sea. Chapter 10:23. The Royal Reed Sea was located by the western border of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. To the northeast of this place was still the territory of the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. However, if one continued to head northeast or north, one would arrive at the eastern vast sky territory. Feeling the boundless, vigorous aura that filled up the heavens and earth, Yen Zhaoge knew that the newcomer was at least a human immortal. However, there was more than one aura. Moreover, as the two auras intersected, it was clear that they were in an intense conflict. They were not from the same side. As the two great experts battled intensely, they neared Broad Creed Mountain. At least they didn't lose their minds and didn't cause great destruction to the living beings on the ground along the way. As the two clashed, a long crevice was ripped open in the sky, seemingly without end, as it extended all the way from the northeast of the Royal Reed Sea. The heaven and earth spiritual chi circulated, but in a short period of time, it was actually unable to mend that mournful crack. When Broad Creed Mountain had battled the star-plucking practitioner Guan Lide in the past, Yen Zhaoge had also left behind a wound in the heavens and earth which had not healed for a long time. However, compared to the current scene that resembled a heavenly tribulation, the wound was much smaller. If one were to look down from even further away at this moment, they would be able to see that this terrifying fissure had begun to appear in the eastern vast heaven territory, slanting towards the southwest, as it practically tore apart every place in the southeastern Yang Heaven territory. Such an intense conflict was quickly sensed by everyone else in the great hall of Broad Creed Mountain's Heaven Rising Peak. No one was surprised. The same thought popped up in everyone's minds at the same time. Here it comes. Yen Di's expression was mild. It looks like yet another esteemed guest has arrived. Then he walked out of the hall. Beside him, Yen Zhaoge walked outside as well. It was the same for the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia on the guest seat. The other guests, as well as Broad Creed mountain martial practitioners, could no longer sit still as they rose and left the great hall. Outside the hall, Yen Zhaoge saw lightning flashing and thunder rumbling in the distant sky. Although they had yet to see him, most of the people present already had an idea. Elder Lu has arrived, Chao Jia said as he looked at the dense thunderclouds in the horizon. Yen Zhaoge nodded. It's the Northeastern Exalt. For Broad Creed Mountain's opening ceremony this time, Yen Zhaoge had sent an invitation to the Northeastern Sky Heaven Territory's Green Sky Mountain's Grave Thunder Palace. Still, the Northeastern Exalt Lu Jinggu had not responded. He didn't say that, but he didn't say that he wouldn't come. From the looks of it, this supreme being of the human realm had good intentions. As the news that the Brocade Emperor was going to personally attend the ceremony at Broad Creed Mountain spread, the pressure brought about by the Heaven Emperor lessened greatly. It was just that on the surface, the Northeastern Exalt actually did not have much contact with Yen Zhaoga and Broad Creed Mountain. There were merely a few people of Golden Court Mountain who knew about this. If Xue Chuqing's relationship with Broad Creed Mountain had yet to be exposed, the Northeastern Exalt, who had once taken care of Xue Chuqing, in secret coming to Broad Creed Mountain for no apparent reason, might arouse suspicions, as they might be able to see through some clues. And now he had finally come. The reason was that someone else had arrived. This person's arrival meant that the relationship between Yen Zhaoga and his mother was already no longer a secret. In this way, even more people would come here. With the Brocade Emperor and the Heaven Emperor restraining each other, the pressure on Broad Creed Mountain had increased greatly. Under such circumstances, the Northeastern Exalt Lu Zhenggu had instead rushed over to the southeast to lend a helping hand. He chased after his opponent all the way, the two of them fighting from the lands of the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory, all the way to the southeastern Yang Heaven Territory's Royal Reed Sea. Yen Zhaoga gazed into the distant horizon. Other than thunderbolts, there was also a great tree that towered into the heavens. Its 9 branches extended into the surroundings, extending amidst space as they towered between the heavens and the earth. The massive tree that was even taller than a mountain peak hovered in midair, yet was moving rapidly as the light of thunder wreathed its entire body as it was quick as flashing lightning. Needless to say, it was none other than the Lord of the Eastern Vast Heaven Territory, the chief of remote Cloud Mountain's clear light locale, the Eastern Exalt, Taoist, One Heaven. Nearing the region of the Royal Reed Sea, the branches of the ancient tree abruptly shook as a figure appeared atop the tree. It was a middle-aged man who had a graceful bearing and was dressed in a green scholar's robe. It was precisely Taoist One Heaven. Instead of wearing a Taoist robe, he wore a scholar's robe and was also so powerful. This was a characteristic that had been passed down in the world beyond worlds for many years, as everyone here did not need to clearly see his appearance to know who he was. Amidst the all-encompassing sea of thunder, a tall figure with a jade belt around his waist and a purple crown on his head surfaced. This tall old man, with a ferocious appearance and a purplish-red face, was naturally the Northeastern Exalt, Lu Zhenggu. As he faced off against Taoist One Heaven, his voice reverberated like a great bell. The Heaven Emperor and Southern Zhuang have blood enmity with Broad Creed Mountain. It is fine if they personally make a move. Yet, One Heaven, you want to make a move as well, bullying the weak as the strong. Aren't you ashamed? Taoist One Heaven shook his head. I originally thought that she had inadvertently formed a connection with the dim, radiant Emperor. From the looks of it now, everything has long since been planned out. The situation is much more serious than previously predicted. It is naturally best to resolve it as soon as possible. For the greater good, these minor details are already insignificant. He gazed at Lu Zhenggu. Instead, must you personally enter the river and stir up this mess for no reason at all? Standing amidst the sea of thunder, Lu Zhenggu's every word was like a thunderclap exploding. Everyone is related. How can there be no reason at all? It is still too early to say whether everyone really feels it or not. Taoist One Heaven was not enraged, as his expression remained indifferent, as he just said, I just received news that the Brocade Emperor will not be arriving today. You can still make it if you leave now while the Heaven Emperor has yet to arrive. Lu Zhenggu's pupils dilated, but his decision did not waver in the least. There is no need for further words. Taoist One Heaven nodded, yet gazed towards the northwest of the Royal Reed Sea. There is indeed no need for further words. There was shockingly yet another powerful aura approaching from that direction. Yen Zhaoga and the others sensed it as well atop broad Creed Mountain, similarly gazing towards the northwest. That was the southern blazing heaven territory. If they continued north, it would be the central June heaven territory. The light of fire suddenly lit up in the northwestern sky. A sea of fire instantly filled the air, clashing with the sea of thunder. Amidst the boundless blazing fire, a five-colored phoenix that was wreathed in multicolored light emerged from within. Enveloped by the silhouette of the phoenix was a handsome man with snowy hair, the southern exalt, Zhuang Shun. There was another person accompanying Zhuang Shun who slowly walked out of the sea of fire, the surrounding blazing fire unable to harm her in the least. It was a petite, thin woman who was completely wrapped in a blue cloak, only her face visible. While the woman could not be said to be supreme beauty, merely possessing average looks, she gave off a shocking feeling. That was because her baleful qi was even denser than that of Zhuang Shun beside her. Northwestern Exalt, Lord of the Red Sea, Lian Zulin, Yan Zhaoge raised his brows. Since the Western Exalt has arrived as well, why not show yourself? Beneath the sea of fire and the sea of thunder, the true surface of the Royal Reed Sea had originally been completely empty. Now, however, a voice resounded, not a simple youngster indeed. The air above the surface of the sea shook slightly as a formless figure manifested. The figure gradually turned from transparent to tangible. Seeing him, those of broad Creed Mountain all simultaneously inhaled a breath of cold air. If not for him taking the initiative to show himself, 99 out of 100 of them would not be able to find him even if they diligently searched for him. It was none other than the Western Exalt, Lang Qing. For Exalts were bearing down on broad Creed Mountain. If the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jie and the Northeastern Exalt Lu Jinggu were included, more than half of the world beyond worlds 10 Exalts were currently gathered in this region of the Royal Reed Sea. Chapter 10:24. High up in the sky, the Northeastern Exalt Lu Jinggu and the Eastern Exalt Taoist One Heaven were in a standoff. Off to the side, the Northwestern Exalt Lian Zulin and the Southern Exalt Zhuang Shun stood side by side, gazing down at broad Creed Mountain that towered over the sea of the Spirit Inheritance region. On the surface of the sea, the Western Exalt Lang Qing suddenly arrived, his gaze meeting with the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jie, who was atop broad Creed Mountain's heaven-rising peak. Let alone the Spirit Inheritance region, where broad Creed Mountain was located, the entire Royal Reed Sea seemed to have frozen at this moment as the pressure emanated by the 6 human exalts seemed to have solidified. The surface of the sea was as calm as a mirror. The normal ebb and flow of the tide was now completely still. It was as if the sea had turned into land. A powerful aura shook space as a projection was formed in the air above the Royal Reed Sea. At this moment, most martial practitioners of the entire southeastern Yang Heaven territory and the neighboring southern Blazing Heaven territory were able to see the scenes in the air above the Royal Reed Sea. Everyone stared blankly at Chao Jie, Zhuang Shun, and the others speechless. While they had some guesses, the fact that so many peak experts had actually gathered in this tiny Royal Reed Sea still caused all the spectators to feel shocked. 3 sovereigns, 5 emperors, 10 supremes. These words represented the strongest existences of the current world beyond worlds. This pattern had been established for more than 1,000 years and was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Over the years, the members of the 3 sovereigns, 5 emperors, and 10 supremes had changed due to various reasons. Apart from extremely special cases, there were times when there were few emperors and supremes, but there were never times when there were too many of them. For example, 100 years ago, before the heavenly young master Chun Qianhua had ascended to the human exalt realm, there had been a short period of time in the world beyond worlds when there had only been exalts of the 9 territories. It was only when Chun Qianhua's talent soared to the heavens in a single step that the 10 supremes once again lived up to his name. Normally, most of the time, the various supremes settled down in their respective territories, rarely going out. Today, however, a total of 6 exalts had congregated at Broad Creed Mountain in the Royal Reed Sea. In recent years, other than when they headed to the central June Heaven Territory's Kunlun Mountain, this was an unprecedented grand occasion. Still, following this would likely be a great battle rarely seen in the world beyond worlds in recent years. A battle between human immortals and supreme martial saints. Although only the Dongbei and Dongfang Supremes had completely released their auras at this moment, Chao Jie, Zhuangshen, and the other 2 had yet to make a move. However, at this moment, feeling that intimidating aura, those of Broad Creed Mountain also felt their hearts trembling in fear. Now, the Southeastern Swords Mistress and the other peak experts of the Southeast who had been invited to attend the meeting were also present on the mountain. There was not just a single late immortal bridge martial saint amongst them. However, even they didn't dare to step foot into it. Otherwise, they would definitely die. A supreme martial saint, a human immortal. What was a human immortal? Below immortals, above mortals. Those who had yet to become immortals were no longer mortals. Amongst the living beings of the human world, only the 10th level of the martial saint realm, the human exalt, had a slight chance of resisting the emperor. To them, looking down on the other martial sages was like looking down on the martial artists of the mortal world by an immortal realm emperor. Besides the southeastern exalt Chao Jie, there were only 2 people on the mountain now who were calm as their expressions did not change. It was precisely Yen Zhaoge and Yen Di. Exalts have come from afar to participate in my Broad Creed Mountain's opening ceremony today. This Yen first thanks all of you here. While Yen Di's expression was mild, his gaze was sharp and sharp. Meeting his gaze, Zhuangshen, Langqing, Taoist One Heaven, and Lien Zulin all knit their brows slightly. Your son Yen Zhaoge made a trip to my southern blazing heaven territory and took away many things, Zhuangshen said coldly. In coming here today, I might as well give your Broad Creed Mountain another great gift. He first gazed at the southeastern exalt Chao Jie. Chao Jie, other than our enmity of the past, what we are after is that phoenix bone. We can only fight over who is superior. Still, I am not in the mood to discuss this with you today. What I want to do is only to raise Broad Creed Mountain and claim Yen Zhaoge's life. If you want to stop me, we will fight to the death today. Hearing this, Chao Jie said mildly, Bring it on. Zhuangshen nodded. Very good. Then he gazed at Yen Zhaoge, gazing at him for a long time before saying, Outstanding youngster. Sadly, I must claim your life today. Those who kill will be killed by others. This principle applies to everyone. Yen Zhaoge smiled. It applies to those of your Wudong slope, it applies to me, and it applies to you as well. Zhuangshen said, That's right. Everything will be decided through combat. The western exalt Langqing now looked at the northeastern exalt Lu Zhenggu. Elder Lu, why did you have to get involved in this mess? Zhuangshen, and you both have enmity with Golden Court Mountain and Broad Creed Mountain. This can be ignored. Lu Zhenggu's voice was like a great bell. This old man has the exact opposite reason as to why Tian Yi and northwestern Lien have come. The northwestern exalt, Lien Zulin, who had been silent ever since she had appeared, suddenly said, Do not associate me with the 2 of you. I am not concerned about what Hu Yuexin's descendant obtained from the dim Radiant Emperor. Still, the supreme treasure of my Red Sea lineage has fallen into their hands. I must get it back. Langqing said, It is fine. The result will be the same. He looked at Lu Zhenggu and Chao Jie. You were only looking out for her in secret earlier. Now, the 2 of you want to openly help Bright Connection, whose descendant, the Bright Connection Emperor, Hu Yuexin, the Grand Master of Yen Zhaoge's mother. Xue Chuqing was an emperor who had vanished without a trace from the historical records of the world beyond worlds. You are openly going against the will of the earthly sovereign now. Taoist One Heaven said slowly. Lu Xinggu snorted, "Don't brag. The earthly sovereign has never said that he wants to capture Xue Chuqing." Lang Qin said mildly, "The earthly sovereign does not quibble with the younger generation. Still, some things have to be dealt with at the end of the day. We should naturally make a move. Is there a need for the earthly sovereign to instruct us?" Perhaps. Lu Xinggu did not argue as thunderbolts rampaged about his body. Still, there are also some things that should be done and some things that should not be done. Zhuangshen gazed upwards, exhaling slowly. Living in this world, there are indeed some things that should be done and some things that should not be done. Some enmity must be avenged. With that, his aura changed, blazing fire surging as a fiery phoenix flapped its wings, an all-encompassing rain of fire descending down towards broad Creed Mountain down below. The northwestern exalt, Lien Zulin, glanced at Taoist One Heaven, and Lang Qing, settle your enmity with Northeast Lu and Southeast Chao yourselves. Those related to that Xue Chuqing are mine. The cloak that enveloped her petite figure was suddenly opened. The endless ocean was crimson as it suffused the area, seeming even vaster than the royal reed sea as it obscured the sky. Enveloped by that crimson sea, everyone present seemed to be unable to control their own lives. The northwestern exalt, Lien Zulin, hailed from the lineage of the Red Sea. It was rumored that she was a personal disciple of the founder of the Jade, clear lineage, the Lord of primordial beginning, the Tao tradition of the legendary bigwig, Master Red Essence. She cultivated in yin and yang, wielding life and death as she was incomparably profound. Following the great calamity, many vicious, fiendish methods had been birthed. While Lien Zulin was a woman, her methods were brutal as she ranked amongst the top of the 10 exalts. This move of hers was even more vicious than that of the southern exalt Zhuangshen. Indeed, no human exalt is easy to get along with. Enveloped by the crimson sea, Yan Zhaoge felt his rather unstable soul seemingly about to leave his fleshly body as it was forcibly extracted by someone. Chapter 10:25. As the southern exalt Zhuangshen and the northwestern exalt Lien Zulin moved, the eastern exalt Taoist One Heaven and the northeastern exalt Lu Xinggu moved as well. Lu Xinggu raised his hand, and thousands of lightning bolts condensed into a dark green spear in his palm. He swung his spear and thrust it forward. The entire sky above the royal reed sea was currently covered densely with dark clouds as thunderbolts roiled. The thunderclouds even extended outside of the royal reed sea. Numerous snakes of lightning snaked about amidst the dark clouds, rapidly traversing the area as they congregated in the air above the spirit inheritance region of the royal reed sea from all directions. Then, an endless number of lightning snakes descended at the same time, wrapping around the spear in Lu Xinggu's hand. In the next moment, a thunderclap rang out. Violent lightning bolts pierced through the heavens and earth, condensing into a line that completely split the void in front of Lu Xinggu. How stable was the space-time of the world beyond worlds? How could worlds like the Eight Extremities world and the vast ocean world compare to it? However, Lu Xinggu's spear thrust still left a horrifying crack in the world. A gap and crevice vaguely appeared in the world beyond worlds at this moment. Even the 9th-level Martial Saint expert, treasured branch suppressing peak, Zhang Shuren, who was proficient in defense, would perish once struck by this spear even if he were to defend with all his might with the Wudong Phoenix perching formation. Be it the Phoenix or the Wudong, they would all be smashed to smithereens by the lightning. The divine firmament true art was ferocious and violent. Lu Xinggu's divine firmament true king spear was invincible. Taoist One Heaven stepped forward to block him. His palms formed a circle in the air, and as the 5 elements complemented each other, a giant vortex appeared. It was the 5 elements' samsara wheel, a unique skill of the remote Cloud Mountain's clear light locale. As this supreme martial art was executed by Taoist One Heaven, it was no different from when Yin Zhaoge had seen Xiang Yang and the others use it. At this time and place, everything in the world seemed to have been transformed into the spiritual energy of the 5 elements. As the vortex spun, it seemed as if there were layers upon layers of figures inside it. They seemed to be alive and dead at the same time, as if the world of the living and the world of the dead had overlapped. To transform all living things into the 5 elements, to transform life and death for the heavens. This was the 5 elements' wheel of life and death. The vortex caught Lu Xinggu's divine firmament true monarch spear, constantly dispelling its destructive power and killing intent, transforming it into vitality, thereby blocking that earth-shattering strike. Even though he was also a human exalt, he still needed to use gentleness to counter Lu Xinggu's attack. However, Taoist One Heaven did not intend to fight Lu Xinggu to the death. His target was Yin Zhaoge and Yin Di, or rather, like Lian Zulin and Lang Qing Shui Chuqing. While he couldn't personally attack Broad Creed Mountain, now, blocking Lu Xinggu was already enough. After taking down Broad Creed Mountain, the things that he wanted would not be lacking. The East, Northeast, South, and Northwest Supremes attacked at the same time. The Western Exalt Lang Qing and the Southeastern Exalt Chao Jia did not make any movements now. Lang Qing rode the wind and crossed the sea, standing quietly on the surface of the sea. It was like this had nothing to do with him, and was just here to watch the show. He did not seem to be on the same side as Zhuangshen and the others. He had a smile on his face, but there was no humor in his eyes. Chao Jia was expressionless. Even though he was currently standing on Broad Creed Mountain, Zhuangshen and Lian Zulin's attacks also enveloping him within, Chao Jia still seemed as if he had not seen them at all. His gaze was fixated firmly on the surface of the sea down below, on the seemingly harmless Western Exalt Lang Qing. There was no other reason than that this was a human exalt who cultivated in the spatial, heavenly scripture of the jade, clear, direct lineage. Distance virtually had no meaning whatsoever to Lang Qing. From a certain perspective, he was likely the fastest of all the experts present. Even Lu Xinggu, who was swift as flashing lightning, was inferior to Lang Qing in terms of pure speed. Indeed, seeing that Taoist One Heaven wanted to slowly wear him down, Lu Xinggu immediately snorted coldly, changing his stance. The greenish-black spear condensed of the light of thunder that was tough and violent instantly became as gentle as water, the most masculine existence between the heavens and the earth. Thunderbolts resembled flowing water at this moment. Lu Xinggu abruptly retracted his spear and retreated before his figure flickered, resembling lightning as he directly bypassed Taoist One Heaven. Now, however, the Western Exalt Lang Qing on the surface of the sea down below moved. Without the slightest delay, Lang Qing had already appeared before Lu Xinggu. It was as if the time he had used to move had been erased from everyone's minds, as they had lost that fragment of time. Spatial distance seemed to not exist for the Western Exalt Lang Qing at this moment. Chao Jia, who had been paying close attention to Lang Qing, finally moved now as well. Condensed sword chi shot into the heavens splitting apart as a speck of starlight was exceptionally bright amidst the darkness of the universe. A majestic, immeasurable will descended, resembling a sovereign descending upon the heavens. The purple Tenuity Emperor star flickered above the sky as it was guided by Chao Jia's sword chi, bolstering his body. Chao Jia formed a sword seal, a streak of purple sword light piercing towards the western exalt Langqing. As compared to the heaven-shocking, earth-shaking might of the other exalts, this sort of Chao Jie's seemed very ordinary. Strangely, however, the purple sword light that seemed completely ordinary actually vaguely caught up to the western exalt Langqing, who was teleporting amidst space despite having been unleashed later. Beneath this sword, Chao Jie's entire aura was different, as he resembled an emperor of the sword, his might domineering between the heavens and the earth, as there was no one who did not obey him. Even the western exalt Langqing's mind was shaken when faced with this purple tenuity sword, as he was hard-pressed to remain calm. He and Chao Jie were old foes, as they were not strangers to each other. Seeing Chao Jie reveal his sharpness, Langqing's figure suddenly vanished from the spot, once more evading this supreme sword of Chao Jie's. But at the same time he disappeared, he appeared in another place. Behind Chao Jie, space distorted within Langqing's empty hand, transforming into a formless, transparent saber which chopped towards Chao Jie. This was his true target. Just like how Langqing was familiar with Chao Jie was also well aware of Langqing's sharp methods. Up in the sky, the purple sword light suddenly expanded, forming a pillar of light which enveloped Chao Jie's entire body. Clang! Chao Jie pointed his sword backwards, not allowing any delay as he barely managed to block Langqing's universal universe spatial saber. Meanwhile, no longer having to worry about Langqing's threat, Lu Zhenggu did not cease in his footsteps as he stabbed towards the southern exalt Zhuangshan with his greenish-black spear. While he was not as fast as Langqing, he was still swift as thunderbolts pierced through space, instantly arriving before Zhuangshan. Beside him, the northwestern exalt Lian Zulin was expressionless as she pressed down on the Red Sea towards Broad Creed Mountain, with one hand while pointing towards Lu Zhenggu's spear with the other. The two qis of yin and yang intermingled at her fingertip, shaking the heavens and the earth as the universe reversed. While that greenish-black spear formed of violent thunderbolts did not deviate from its target, in order to resist the influence of Lian Zulin's yin-yang finger, Lu Zhenggu's movements instantly turned slightly sluggish. The reason why he had attacked Zhuangshan and not Lian Zulin was precisely because he knew that Lian Zulin cultivated in the yin-yang heavenly scripture and did not fear being ganged up on. Still, Lian Zulin's cultivation base was profound, as her finger from afar was still extraordinarily profound, as she did not attack him. Obstructed by her like this, the southern exalt held nothing back as he continued attacking towards Broad Creed Mountain. Because in this instant, Taoist One Heaven, who had been temporarily shaken off by Lu Zhenggu earlier, had already caught up, punching towards Lu Zhenggu's back. Chapter 10:26. The mortal supremes used their own methods and fell into a chaotic battle. Everyone could face attacks from more than one opponent at any time. While the southeastern exalt Chao Jie had blocked the western exalt Langqing, the attack of the northeastern exalt Lu Zhenggu had still been blocked by the northwestern exalt Lian Zulin. With this slight delay, the eastern exalt Taoist One Heaven had already arrived behind him, punching out. Unlike Lu Zhenggu's purple lightning, Taoist Tiandao's hand was currently surrounded by green lightning, the lineage of the remote Cloud Mountain's clear light locale, which was also part of the southern extremity longevity emperor's lineage, also cultivated in lightning arts. The longevity martial codex was all-encompassing. Aside from having a long life force, the cultivator could also use lightning to temper their body and obtain great power. Even though it was not as ferocious as the Grave Thunder Palace's Divine Firmament Orthodox technique, the Clear Light Monastery's martial arts were also extremely sharp. This immortal capital lightning light fist was a secret killing technique recorded in the Longevity Martial Manual. Taoist One Heaven used the 5 elements wheel of life and death to transform life energy into death energy, and then he used the immortal capital lightning fist, This was his full strength, his power unparalleled. Open Lu Xinggu did not panic even though he had forced his way to his back. He exhaled and shouted loudly, his voice like a clap of thunder as it shook half of the southeastern Yangheaven territory. The purple-crowned elder didn't dodge. Instead, golden lightning surged from his body. As soon as the golden lightning appeared, the flow of time in the surrounding void seemed to come to a standstill. Everything became eternal and unchanging, everlasting, immortal, and indestructible. Taoist One Heaven's immortal capital thunder light fist landed on the golden lightning. There was no world-shaking explosion, no chaotic airflow. That moment seemed to have frozen, turning into eternity. It was ranked 5th among the 9 heavenly thunder. Immortal eternal thunder, eternity and instant, the two extremes of time. By comprehending the true meaning and profundities of eternity and instant, one would be able to see through the secrets of time. The 9 heavenly immortal thunders each had their own wondrous uses. Among them, the immortal eternal thunder and the instant divine thunder, which were ranked 5th and 6th respectively, could be combined to explain the true essence of creation and time. Lu Xinggu's fighting style was fierce and violent, and it consumed a lot of energy. Still, with the everlasting thunder, so long as he did not surpass a certain limit, the true essence and chi of this northeastern exalt was virtually limitless. This lightning technique was used to protect oneself, and its defensive power was even stronger. Lu Xinggu relied on the immortal eternal thunder to take on Taoist priest One Heaven's punch. His body swayed, and his purplish-red face instantly turned pale before returning to normal. Because of Lien Zulin, the opportunity had already been lost. Lu Xinggu was able to pick up and let it go. He simply ignored Zhuang Shen and thrust his spear straight at Taoist One Heaven's chest. Taoist One Heaven's eyes flashed. Green lightning leaped in his eyes, and purple lightning suddenly surged in their depths. His strength suddenly increased by a notch. Yen Zhaoge was extremely familiar with this eruption of power. It was an instant's thunder. Back when he had obtained the fragment of the eye of the Thunder Emperor from Clear Light Locale disciple Xiang Yang, Yen Zhaoge had guessed that the Eastern Exalt Taoist One Heaven was likely proficient in an instant's thunder as well. Now that he was using it, it was indeed extraordinary. He was a human immortal in the first place. Now that his power had suddenly blazed and erupted, the terrifying, explosive power instantly caused him to be even mightier than the northeastern exalt Lu Xinggu. He crossed his palms and slapped the greenish-black spear that was formed from lightning, directly breaking it and shattering it into streaks of lightning. As this spear shattered, the lightning it transformed into scattered into the surroundings heavens and earth were completely bathed in a torrential thunderstorm. Numerous thick pillars of lightning descended, mightily piercing through the sea's surface. Countless pillars of lightning densely covered the area, causing it to be completely transformed into a purgatory of thunder. At this moment, the region of sea where Broad Creed Mountain was located in the Spirit Inheritance region was even more threatening than the clear scenic region where endless magnetic storms rampaged. Martial practitioners who had yet to attain the immortal bridge realm would be blasted into smithereens in mere moments, even if they were to enter this domain of thunder and lightning. After this eruption of power, having dispelled Lu Xinggu's divine sky true king spear, Taoist One Heaven's aura weakened slightly as well. Still, he inhaled deeply, quickly regaining his original momentum. Taoist One Heaven had already analyzed an instant's thunder for many years. With his high cultivation base and precise control over it, he could adjust the level of eruption of an instant's thunder as he wished, not having to completely incinerate all of his power in one go. Now, Lu Xinggu attacked once more, thunderbolts exploding consecutively with seemingly endless momentum. Taoist One Heaven's face was sunken as water as he changed his stance, once more using softness to overcome toughness as he stalled Lu Xinggu. Light and shadows shone as the Battle of the Exalts was witnessed by virtually everyone in the southern Blazing Heaven territory to the west and the southeastern Yang Heaven territory to the east. Countless martial practitioners sighed in amazement at this moment. Back then, the southern Exalt Zhuangshun had fought 1 against 4, simultaneously facing the southeastern Swords Mistress and the other 2 9th-level martial saints, as well as Long Hanhua of the 8th level of the martial saint realm. Even without using his true martial arts, he had still been able to deal with them with ease. Now, clashing with opponents of the same level, these human Exalt experts could only be considered to be truly displaying their abilities, displaying them in the most direct manner. Why was it said that the difference between the 9th and 10th levels of the martial saint realm was as great as the heavens and the earth? Still, there were disharmonious existences on this battlefield that challenged their common sense. What challenged everyone's preconceptions even more was that there was not just one such existence. Seeing that Lu Xinggu was entangled by Taoist One Heaven once more, Lien Zulin was just about to return her attention to broad Creed Mountain before her. Now, however, a saber light lit up before her eyes. Wherever the saber light went, the creation seemed to change. A tyrannical, domineering, powerful saber intent that looked down on all beneath the heavens transformed into a heaven-splitting saber, chopping towards the Red Sea above Broad Creed Mountain, as well as the owner of the Red Sea. The ferocious and vast scarlet sea surged and pressed down, but it was actually split apart by the saber light. The blade light continued to rise, showing the process of the creation world from the creation of heaven and earth to the destruction of heaven and earth. It was not simply the creation of heaven and earth, nor was it simply the passing of creation into destruction. Instead, it was a complete process from beginning to end. Therefore, it was unstoppable. The change of creation, the trend of the times, it swept through and crushed everything. Even the Red Sea beneath the northwestern Exalt Lien Zulin's palm was split apart right down the middle at this moment, the seawater receding to the sides. At this moment, there was no one else who could have attacked. There was only Broad Creed Mountain's current chief, Yen Di. The mid-immortal bridge stage of the 8th level of the martial saint realm was clashing head-on with a human Exalt of the 10th level of the martial saint realm. A brilliant light erupted within the eyes of the western Exalt Lien Zulin as she appeared unprecedentedly serious. She suddenly flipped her palm. Without any warning, a white radiance suddenly appeared in the crimson sea, condensing into a circle like the surface of a mirror. It was none other than the supreme martial art of the Red Sea, the bright red yin-yang change. A streak of white mirror light descended. While it seemed tiny wherever it passed, all life force was severed. The baleful chi and killing intent within were even more ferocious than that of the Red Sea earlier. Also, its power was completely concentrated in a single line as it was directed straight at Yen Di alone. Yen Di was fearless, as his saber did not waver or move as it hacked straight towards Lien Zulin. Chapter 10:27. The Scarlet Sea lineage of the world beyond world's northwestern dim heaven territory was rumored to be the lineage of the Jade Clear Lineage's founder, the Lord of Primordial Beginning's disciple, Master Red Essence. Legend had it that Qi Jingzi's Dao Hall, the Taihua Mountain's cloudy sky cave, had a treasure called the Yin-Yang Mirror. When this treasured mirror shone on a person's body, it could determine life and death. It had 2 sides, yin and yang. The yin side was white, and the yang side was red. When the white side flashed, it would lead to death, and when the red side flashed, it would lead to life. In the legends of the investiture of the gods, he was famous The Scarlet Sea's ultimate technique, the bright crimson yin-yang change, originated from this. Lien Zulin flipped her palm, and a white light appeared in the Red Sea. It condensed into a white yin mirror that was similar to the yin-yang mirror. Its lethality was unparalleled, and it could kill anyone it shone upon. It was no joke that the Northwestern Exalt Lien Zulin was ranked amongst the top of the 10 Exalts in the number of people she had slain. Of the other 5 Exalts of the same cultivation level as Lien Zulin, besides the Southern Exalt Zhuang Shun, who was bolstered by the earlier Heaven's 4 virtues and possessed shocking defensive power, even Lang Qing, Chao Jia, and the other 2 did not dare to take this blow from Lien Zulin head-on. That yin and yang reversal, that strike that determined life and death, contained a heavy killing intent that was rarely seen in the world. Taoist priest Tianyi's Qinghua Temple's 5 elements, Wheel of Life, and Death looked similar, but if it dared to clash head-on with Lien Zulin's attack, it would be instantly destroyed. Even Zhuang Shun, who was supported by 4 virtues, would try to dodge if he could. If he really took this blow, it would definitely not be easy for him. At this moment, however, an immortal bridge martial saint had no intention of dodging or retreating at all when faced with Lien Zulin's ferocious blow. Yen Di, facing the white mirror light, his expression did not change at all. He only raised the saber in his hand, amidst the deafening roar of a dragon. Not only did Yen Di not retract his saber, he instead exerted more force. Wherever the blade pointed, it was even more domineering and sharp. The unrestrained saber light directly cut through the world in front of her and arrived in front of Lien Zulin. Perishing together with the enemy, when I was fighting for my life, you didn't exist in this world. Lien Zulin's expression was cold as she raised her other hand. At this moment, half of the boundless scarlet sea suddenly turned into a vast expanse of white. In the white sea, a red light flashed and turned into a round mirror. At this moment, the ocean was half red and half white, and there was a spot of light in each of them. The entire ocean was like a yin-yang Tai Chi diagram, compared to the white mirror light in the Red Sea, which could kill people. The red mirror light in the White Sea helped people find a way out. Scarlet light condensed before Lien Zulin, blocking Yen Di's saber. However, just like how he had cleaved apart the Red Sea earlier, Yen Di's saber light swept through everything before it at this moment. The general trend is with me, and I will succeed in every endeavor. All obstructions would eventually be swept away. Yen Di's tyrannical saber actually forcibly broke through Lien Zulin's bright red yin-yang change. A crack was forcibly cleaved open on that crimson mirror by Yen Di's saber light. The blade light and the mirror light were locked in a stalemate. The saber light continued to move forward, and the crack on the mirror became bigger and bigger. Lien Zulin was slightly taken aback, but did not mind it because that white mirror light that represented death had already descended upon Yen Di's head as well. In this way, the victor had been decided. Even though the might of Yen Di's saber arts left her in a rather sorry state, still, she was confident that even if the crimson mirror was broken, it would still be able to withstand a saber from Yen Di. Yet, Yen Di would definitely be unable to withstand it as soon as he was illuminated by the white light. While it was rather hard to believe, Lien Zulin had to admit that if this immortal bridge martial saint attacked fiercely, he truly possessed the strength to threaten her. Yet, in terms of defense, he was far inferior to her, who was a human immortal. Just as Lien Zulin was thinking this, her expression suddenly changed slightly. Streams of qi surged out from above Yen Di's head, instantly transforming into a dark, chaotic clump of clouds. Within the clump of clouds, specks of light flickered. They were not bright, not dazzling, not resplendent, not eye-catching. The concept within was hard to fathom and hard to describe. The cloud chi expanded and changed, blooming like a lotus flower. The borders of the petals were blurry as they were indistinguishable from the surrounding space. As the white mirror light that reaped one's life landed on that existence that resembled a clump of clouds and a lotus flower, slight ripples arose. The lotus swayed unceasingly, the cloud chi expanding unceasingly. Yet, as soon as the white light entered that cloud chi, it lost its miraculousness, no longer moving, let alone harming Yendi. Yet, Yendi's saber grew stronger and stronger until that white sea and crimson mirror were completely shattered. His saber did not cease as he continued chopping towards Lien Zulin. Lien Zulin was shocked. While she was confident and arrogant, having experienced countless battles, Lien Zulin had naturally learnt about Broad Creed Mountain's situation before coming. While Yendi was shockingly powerful, it was still within her predictions. Lien Zulin had always been on guard against the many treasures that Broad Creed Mountain possessed. Yet, never would she have thought that a grand simplicity splendor cloud would suddenly appear above Yendi's head, actually blocking her killing move head-on. The bright yin-yang change of the bright yin-yang change was unable to do anything to the grand simplicity splendor cloud. Yet, the red-yang change, which she used to defend herself, had been broken through by a single saber of Yendi's. The saber in Yendi's hands was still the heavenly dragon saber that he had forged himself. Different from before, the current heavenly dragon saber was already a high-grade sacred artifact. It had only been a few years since Yendi had ascended to the immortal bridge stage. It had not been easy for him to forge a high-grade sacred artifact. Still, Broad Creed Mountain's current wealth was abundant. Yen Zhaoga had provided all the remaining dragon corpses of the Myriad Dragon Palace to Yendi, supplementing them with many other treasures. In just a few short years, a high-grade sacred artifact, Heavenly Dragon Saber, had been forged. With the grand simplicity splendor cloud protecting him, Yendi currently had no need to consider defense at all. One with the saber, his martial true intent was displayed to the point of perfection. Even though Lien Zulin had already reacted quickly enough, immediately wielding her sacred artifact to protect her, she was still injured by Yendi's saber as she was caught off guard. Everyone who witnessed this scene involuntarily broke into an uproar. It had seemed like an unfair clash. In the end, Yendi, who was an immortal bridge martial saint, had actually won by a single move. The grand simplicity splendor cloud above Yendi's head, his saber held horizontally before his chest as he roared towards the heavens. "Human exalt, your reputation is well deserved. This battle was delightful. Let us continue." Lien Zulin retreated, her expression heavy. She had originally thought that against an opponent of the mid-immortal bridge stage, she would be able to end this battle with her cultivation base, whether the other party was barehanded or using a weapon. Even if the other party was a heaven-defying genius with outstanding strength, how was she, Lien Zulin, not also a genius amongst geniuses, having been able to reach where she was now? Still, at the end of the day, she had still been forced to use her weapon. Otherwise, her injuries would have been even more severe. Lien Zulin raised her hand, the fresh, bloodied wound on it a shocking sight to behold. She executed the bright red yin-yang change, which symbolized life once more. Where the red mirror light shone, the wound instantly began to heal. Yet, while her flesh and blood healed once more, a scar remained which was twisting unceasingly. It was like an enraged dragon was buried beneath the flesh and blood of her left hand, struggling to break out of it. That was Yendi's saber intent, still remaining within Lien Zulin's body. With her cultivation base at the 10th level of the martial saint realm, she was actually unable to effectively suppress that tyrannical, rampaging saber intent whilst continuing to attack. Chapter 10:28. Lien Zulin stared fixedly at Yendi. Everyone else directed their gazes towards that saber-wielding figure as well. Even Lang Qing, Zhuang Shun, and the other exalts who were currently battling had diverted some of their attention to this battlefield. Yan Zhaoge's battles at Vast Spirit Mountain and Circumference Mountain that year had shocked the entire world. If one were to say that Yan Zhaoge's strength had been hard to accurately gauge due to the special factor of the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation in the battle at Circumference Mountain, Yan Zhaoge had forcibly repelled Zhang Shuren and Yuan Xianqing as a seeing divinity martial saint, even beating Yuan Xianqing to the point of undergoing nirvanic rebirth more than once. Taoist East Spring and Zhao Zhan of the 8th level of the martial saint realm had even been slain by Yan Zhaoge on the spot. Such battle accomplishments shocked the world. Having already possessed such strength at the seeing divinity stage, what would happen now that he had ascended the immortal bridge stage? Everyone had a general understanding of Yan Zhaoge's strength. Now, however, Yan Di's strength similarly left everyone sighing in admiration. His saber intent is very strange. It's a little like Lang Qing seemed to have caught onto something as he gazed at Yan Di, but it was gone in a flash, and that auspicious cloud above his head. That is, Lian Zulin seemed to have thought of something as well. Still, her brows were tightly knit as she felt like she was looking at flowers through a fog. It was just that whatever she was thinking, the heavenly dragon saber in Yan Di's hand shook as he strode forward to attack once more. This time, Lian Zulin was extremely careful. At this moment, she had completely placed Yan Di on the same level as her, completely treating him as a human exalt. It was as if the person she was battling was not a mid-immortal bridge martial saint, but someone on the same level as Chao Jia or Lu Zhenggu. She had not recognized the sharpness of Yan Di's saber arts earlier, even less having thought of the existence of the grand simplicity splendor cloud. She had wanted to rely on the ferocity of her bright red yin-yang change to end the battle quickly, taking care of Yan Di within a short period of time. In the end, it had instead been her, who had nearly been defeated in just a few moves. Having learnt her lesson now, Lian Zulin fought steadily, countering each move as it came. As a human exalt who had been renowned for many years, she did not just possess a single high-grade sacred artifact. Yan Di, while it was inferior to existences like the Extreme Yang Seal and the Extreme Yin Crown, it was still virtually comparable to the evil sword Tao Tai, even surpassing weapons like the cloud-circulating heavenly light sword, the purple sea sword, and the golden crow incinerating heaven saber. In the hands of human exalts, high-grade sacred artifacts were even more powerful. With the support of the weapon, Lian Zulin's attacks were even more ferocious. The grand simplicity splendor cloud above Yan Di's head completely disregarded his own defenses as he unleashed his full power attacks towards Lian Zulin. Both sides exchanged offense with offense, and the battle was earth-shattering. Having integrated a portion of the concepts of the Yin-Yang Heavenly Scripture, the Life Creation Heavenly Scripture, and the Cyclic Heavenly Scripture into his saber intents, Yan Di, who usually also studied them, his true essence was robust, and his chi returning speed was similarly far superior to that of ordinary immortal bridge martial saints. That was why he was able to support his peerlessly powerful saber technique. However, his opponent was Lian Zulin, who was a human immortal. Yan Di's exhaustion was far greater than when he fought with other enemies. As time passed, his stamina would gradually decline. However, what caused Lian Zulin to feel more and more shocked was that while his true essence and stamina were greatly depleted, Yan Di's saber was circulating more and more freely as it was domineering and sharp. He seemed to be gradually adapting to the strength of a supreme martial saint. It was as if the layer of stone covering the surface of a beautiful jade was peeling off bit by bit, and the brilliance within was becoming more and more dazzling. Over there, Yan Di and Lian Zulin were engaged in a heated battle. At the same time, Yan Zhaoge met the southern exalt Zhuangshen. After Lu Jinggu had been obstructed by Lien Zulin earlier, Zhuangshen no longer had any reservations as he viciously attacked Yan Zhaoge. Meeting enemies, their eyes blazed with fury. Words were already unnecessary at this moment. The massive fiery phoenix spread its wings, obscuring the heavens and obscuring the sun. Infinite, endless rain of fire descended, enveloping the entire spirit inheritance region. The place where it was most concentrated was unquestionably broad Creed Mountain. Everyone said that the southern exalt Zhuangshen was weak in attack and strong in defense. Still, that was only in comparison to Chao Jie and the others who were at the same cultivation level. If it were an opponent beneath the human exalt stage, it would still be filled with a destructive might that could destroy the heavens and extinguish the earth. Yan Zhaoge's expression did not change as he rose up from the peak of broad Creed Mountain, directly striking out with a palm. While he struck upwards beneath Yan Zhaoge's palm, the skies seemed to be reversing at this moment. The might of the heavens collapsing assaulted the fiery phoenix. Beneath the majestic force of heaven and earth reversal, it seemed as if it wanted to collapse the heavens and the earth here. Space distorted as the fiery phoenix instantly emitted a mournful cry. The scattered rain of fire between the heavens and the earth continued descending as it instead distorted into a clump before exploding and being extinguished. After having ascended the immortal bridge, this cyclic heavenly seal of Yan Zhaoge's truly possessed the divine might that could flip the heavens and overturn the earth. Arise! Zhuangshen snorted coldly, ripples of water, soil, white qi, and purple light instantly enveloping that fiery phoenix. Bolstered by the four virtues, the fiery phoenix spread its wings and soared high into the air once more. The thick earth of meritorious virtue replenished the heavens and extended the Tao, preventing the phoenix's fire from being extinguished. The water ripples of holy virtue were impervious to all arts as they helped the phoenix resist the heaven-shaking, earth-overturning changes. The fortuitous purple light was impervious to killing tribulations as it protected the fiery phoenix from being crushed and slain amidst that distorted space. The white qi of nether virtue was inexhaustible with life force. Not only was it imperishable, it also helped the fiery phoenix to find a way out of this perilous environment. Even more eye-catching was that it was not just the four virtues that enveloped the fiery phoenix. Even the rain of fire that it emitted as it flapped its wings was the same. Bolstered by the four virtues, those meteors of fire also resisted the palm force of Yan Zhaoge's cyclic heavenly seal, becoming tough and sturdy as they continued descending towards Yan Zhaoge. Seeing this from the side, the gaze of his old rival, the southeastern exalt Chao Jie, immediately hardened slightly. He has improved quite a bit the moment an expert made a move. One would be able to tell the difference between them. Zhuangshen's proficiency in the Phoenix true form scripture was clearly much greater than that of Yuan Xiancheng, Zhang Shuren, and Peng He. The four virtues that possessed shocking defensive power were utilized in his attacks at this moment. While his attacks might not be as brutal and violent as those of Chao Jie, Lien Zulin, and Lu Jinggu, they were still extremely powerful and filled with toughness as they were unceasing, seemingly without end as they were hard to defeat. With just this move alone, Zhuangshen had already caused everyone to look at him, virtually completely reversing the impression that he had previously left of being weak in offense and strong in defense. Zhuangshen was naturally aware of the special characteristics of his martial arts, as he had also been unceasingly researching them, supplementing, and improving them. The results were right before his eyes. Good. Looking at Zhuangshen, Yan Zhaoge cheered lightly. However, he had no intention of evading as he still raised his palm high. At this moment, his aura surged even higher. An illusory figure seemed to appear between the heavens and the earth. Yen Zhaoge stood towering between the heavens and the earth. His palm that was raised high above his head seemed to have truly merged as one with the sky. Lofty, simple, solemn, authoritative, domineering, vigorous. Faced with Zhuangshen's powerful attack, Yen Zhaoge had no intention of evading at all as he met it head-on, unleashing another cyclic, heavenly seal. As his palm descended, the heavens collapsed as it smashed towards the fiery phoenix, and Zhuangshen. This was a competition of who was stronger, who was mightier, who was more domineering. Chapter 10:29. Yen Zhaoge's palm overturned the heavens, causing the entire universe before him to hang upside down. A corner of the spatial boundaries of the world beyond worlds vaguely distorted and shattered. Such violent power caused the eyelids of the northeastern exalt, Lu Xinggu, to twitch wildly. This is a palm that an early immortal bridge martial saint can unleash. Such a power that reversed yin and yang and overturned heaven and earth caused the flaming meteors that flickered with four-colored light to be forcibly fixed in midair, unable to move. The colorful light on the surface of the fiery meteor kept shaking. First, the water ripples were shattered, then the yellow soil was blown away, then the purple light was extinguished, and finally the white gas disappeared. Even the cyclic heavenly seal should not possess such great power, being able to allow an immortal bridge martial saint to break Southern Zhuang's earlier Heaven Four virtues. Seeing this, the Western exalt Lang Qing's gaze flickered. This palm of his is based on the cyclic heavenly scripture, yet also contains the essence and profundities of many other supreme martial arts. Lang Qing could recognize the yin-yang heavenly scripture, the life creation heavenly scripture, the Taiji yin-yang palm, the Aeon light heavenly scripture, and many other supreme divine arts. There seemed to be the orthodox, dim, radiant 12 arts of the dim radiant sect as well. This was not the end. There must be other supreme arts. The problem was, how old was Yen Zhaoge? In just a few decades of life, how could one cultivate and comprehend so many supreme arts at the same time and have such deep attainments in all of them? Even though the Western exalt Lang Qing was experienced and knowledgeable as he presided over a region, he still felt it hard to believe at this moment. Fallen deity, is it? Having lost the support of the four virtues, those meteors lost their momentum against this cyclic heavenly seal of Yen Zhaoge's. Under the effects of the martial true intent that grasped the power of the duality of duality, the flames were all extinguished and turned extremely cold. The fiery meteors all turned into ice and then shattered into fine powder. The world that was scorching hot a moment ago, like a blazing inferno, had now turned into a world of ice and snow. Under the effect of the ice and snow, the fire phoenix seemed to have lost its vitality. The southern exalt, Zhuangshen, was probably the one who understood Yen Zhaoge's strength the most out of everyone present. As his moves changed, the fire phoenix once again flapped its wings and flew high into the sky. With the four virtues added to its body, it wanted to forcefully prop up the collapsing sky and stabilize the upside-down changes of the universe. Yen Zhaoge's palm did not change as he formed a sword seal with his other hand, pointing towards Zhuangshen. The azure dragon roared. If that was all, Zhuangshen wouldn't mind. However, the azure dragon's body emitted rays of sharp purplish-red sword light. It was incomparably ferocious and exterminated all life. For a moment, it was as if the azure dragon was spurting blood. Blood spurted out from every single scale on its body. The exuberant life force turned into extreme death energy at this moment. The death energy condensed into a sword, pointing straight at Zhuangshen. It was precisely Yen Zhaoge's self-created martial art, slaying Azure Dragon. Having learnt of the existence of Yen Zhaoge's sword arts from the survivors of the Battle of Vast Spirit Mountain that year, Zhuangshen had been rather mindful of it. now that he was personally facing it, he still felt that it was beyond his expectations. What a brutal sword art! It is clearly of the Jade Clear lineage. Yet why is it as brutal as the Prime Clear Immortal Slaughtering Sword? It was not just Zhuangshun. The Eastern Exalt Taoist One Heaven frowned as well, as compared to Wudong Slope's Phoenix True Form scripture. The longevity martial scripture of his Clear Light Locale's lineage was even more disadvantaged against Yen Zhaoga's Slaying Azure Dragon. Just now, his Flipping Sky Seal was not activated by the Instant Thunder method or any other method that stimulates the concentrated burning and eruption of power. It was his normal power. What concerned Taoist One Heaven the most was this. He himself was proficient in an instant thunder, being able to temporarily erupt with shocking power. Therefore, seeing Yen Zhaoga clash head-on against Zhuangshun, he could not help but feel rather doubtful. Now, however, seeing Yen Zhaoga simultaneously unleashing sword and palm, the cyclic heavenly seal with one hand and the slaying azure dragon with the other, both possessing peerless power, Taoist One Heaven knew that his earlier guess had been wrong. This youth before him, who was not even a fraction of his age, was really able to forcibly resist human exalts like him and Zhuangshun as a 7th-level martial saint. Seeing Yen Zhaoga's slaying azure dragon, Zhuangshun's gaze turned solemn. A strand of white qi shook about his body as he merged with the fiery phoenix, suddenly transforming into a thin line of fire that evaded Yen Zhaoga's slaying azure dragon. The line of fire spun once in midair, slicing towards Yen Zhaoga's body. Space was sliced into two by this rampaging line of fire at this moment, crimson red where the gap was. Space itself seemed to have been set ablaze, as the spatial tear was hard to close. This heavenly splitting flowing fire slash was the peak-killing move of the Phoenix Wing Heavenly Net Saber. Of the entire Wudong Slope, there was only the southern exalt Zhuangshun who had successfully cultivated it. Yen Zhaoga returned with a slaying azure dragon, meeting Zhuangshun's heaven-splitting flowing fire slash head-on. Having exchanged a move with Yen Zhaoga, Zhuangshun, who had been unable to gain any advantage in the slightest, resorted to the same old trick, that thread of fire that he had transformed into traverse space, attempting to evade Yen Zhaoga's sharpness once more. However, the heaven-swallowing, earth-devouring box suddenly appeared within Yen Zhaoga's hands. The sword case opened, and black light shot out in all directions. An ancient bronze sword emerged from it. Grabbing the ancient bronze sword, Yen Zhaoga drew a circle in midair. As the black light flowed, the circle directly turned into a black hole, emitting a terrifying suction force that sucked in the slender line of fire. Things were different now. The current Yen Zhaoga was able to perfectly exert the power of a high-grade sacred artifact. The sword intent of the evil sword Tao Tai merged with Yen Zhaoga's slaying azure dragon. Not only was there a powerful suction force coming from the terrifying black hole, but there were also flashes of purplish-red bloodlight that were incomparably fierce. If it was said that the black hole was like a giant beast opening its mouth to devour the heavens and the earth, then at this moment, not only was it going to devour its opponent, it was going to bite it into pieces. The line of fire expanded and transformed back into the fire phoenix. A saber appeared in Zhuangshun's hands, as well, the patterns on its blade resembling phoenix feathers. He raised his saber, chopping towards the black hole. Like Lien Zulan, Zhuangshun also possessed more than a single high-grade divine artifact. Weapons and martial practitioners cooperated seamlessly, possessing great strength as they mutually boosted their might. The glow of high-grade sacred artifacts, like the bright barbarian Taoist robe, and the phoenix cry crown lit up on Yen Zhaoga as he clashed with Zhuangshun, not backing down in the slightest. Seeing the phoenix cry crown that had originally belonged to Zhang Shuren, Zhuangshun's expression turned even colder. The silhouetted fiery phoenix spread its wings before abruptly coming together, chopping towards Yan Zhaoge. Yan Zhaoge pointed with his sword, intercepting Zhuang Shun's attack. Then he waved upwards with his palm, a golden sun slowly rising into the sky, all-encompassing radiance appearing as it resembled the high sun in the sky. Illuminated by the brilliant sunlight, even the exalts felt unbearably hot as a burning sensation arose on the surface of their bodies. It was precisely the extreme Yang seal that could be said to be one of the kings amongst sacred artifacts. Before the great battles of Vast Spirit Mountain and Circumference Mountain, when Yan Zhaoge's strength had still not been widely known by the entire world, many people had already felt wary of him, believing that there was a great disparity between him and the immortal bridge. The reason for this was the extreme Yang seal. Having attained the body of an immortal bridge martial saint, Yan Zhaoge would be able to fully wield the power of the extreme Yang seal. Meanwhile, at its peak, this king of sacred artifacts would be able to easily slay an expert of the 9th level of the martial saint realm with just a single strike. Zhuang Shun, Lang Qing, and the others who were already at the 10th level of the martial saint realm and possessed the bodies of human immortals would definitely not have it easy for them if they were struck by the extreme Yang seal.